right, let's do it. What is up, guys? Welcome for another episode of the Group Up Podcast. We're here for the Great Support Debate 2024 edition, and I brought 3 support players and 1 imposter neutral neutral observer. Some guy with some mercy wings to hash it out about the state of supports as we stand. So let me introduce my guests, and we'll get right into it. In the top right on your side of things is Emiliath. Emiliath, how are you doing? Who are you representing today?
Who am I? Oh, Anna, I guess, probably. She's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Whose propaganda will you be spreading?
Oh, Anna, for sure.
Yeah.
But I play most supports, so honestly, there's not really any that I hate. So
that's good.
I'm pro support everything.
I want to get the guests' biases out, because otherwise chat will start getting, the comments will be like, this guy sounds like a fucking Ana main or whatever. This guy sounds like a mercy apologist or whatever, which I know AVRL will
I'm a Lucio
not.
main.
Okay, well, we'll see when we get to that. In the bottom right, unfortunately cropped as KarQ in his background in my cut, but I think you guys know him by now. KarQ, what's up, man?
My favorite streamer,
up, guys? Hold on. Wait, let me open your stream. I can move my camera, which will make like a weirder cut on Discord, but let me line it up on stream, I think. Hold on. So you need more of this side, right? Let's see.
Oh, beautiful.
Am I still arced?
Beautiful.
Is that better?
There we go. Audio listeners, we now have a KarO, but yes, we got KarQ basically.
Okay,
Let's
perfect.
go.
Perfect.
How you doing, KarQ?
I'm good. How are you? How's everybody doing? Well, hello. Haven't yapped in a while on the podcast. I think it's been a few months since I've been on here. So
we got to get you yapping, KarQ. You're such a quiet, humble guy. We need to get you just yapping and ranting.
I don't have very strong opinions that like I feel like I need a lot of explanation or justification for. So I've been quiet, in light of all the debates on social media on the state of the game and direction of the game and all the hot topics. But maybe I'll lay them out today, but we'll see.
We'll see what you can find get out of me. Exactly. We'll see what button we can push. We'll see what hatred we can unleash from KarQ. Unfortunately, DPS Doom doesn't exist anymore, so I can't quite get you riled up super easy, but
oh no, there's a couple heroes that can rile me up.
Okay.
Venture's kind of up there.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Not Venture for me. It's a sniper for me. The one that's purple, but hey,
Okay. All right. Leaving very little room to the imagination. All right. In the bottom left, rounding out our explicitly support cast, is my man Custa. Custa, what's up?
Yo, what's up? How you doing, man?
I'm good. Where's your bias lying?
I'm actually coming in with a pretty moderate take. Like I'm pretty happy with where we're sitting right now, overall in the game. I don't think. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I take that back. I think the game is in the worst spot it's ever been, and I think we should overhaul absolutely everything, and we should give Ana a rocket launcher.
Much better.
Sorry, my bad. I started off slow there.
There you go. We didn't take long to coax that out of you, but there your true feelings came out. All right. And in the top left, again, here to keep everyone honest, here to be like, you know what? Fuck you guys. You're all wrong. You're all idiots. This is what it really is at, is AVRL. AVRL, talk us through your background and your role today.
I'm here to represent the Mercies, of course. The reason that's funny is because anyone that's aware of the AVRL lore knows that I absolutely despise Mercy. So that'll be really interesting. Yeah, no, we'll see what happens today. I probably, of the roles that I play, I've probably had the most time on support of any of the roles. I think I've been pretty generalist. I tend to flex queue a lot. So, but I probably ended up playing most of the supports through flex queuing. Just no, I actually probably lands you on tank most of the time, but yeah, tank and support, I suppose. But yeah, it was like we're doing supports. Pink Mercy just came out, and a lot of people got into it. It's a good cause, actually, so I think people should get into it. And we got the information that it actually bumped up the Mercy play rate a little bit, so I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what a time to be alive. It is a great cause. I also saw someone, I think, came to my chat and told me that the release of Pink Mercy caused Overwatch on the Steam charts on like the gross to go from like 35th to like 8th or something.
Hell yeah.
The power
the charity purchases added to the gross? Isn't this supposed to be like a separate transaction? Well, I guess
as in money sent through Steam. As in, yeah, money sent through Steam, right? Like spent
money
in
moved
the game.
Steam. Okay.
So that went up a lot of places. So the power of the Pink Mercy, if only they can channel that for themselves.
Don't worry, Steam got their cut, so they're happy. Gabe's
Probably.
happy
Got
with
their
Big
transaction
Mercy.
fees.
Let's be clear.
This is true. This is true. Okay, guys. Well, let's start with the general opening thoughts, as we always do. Get your rough feelings. Custa's already kind of elaborated his, but we'll go into a bit more detail. How are you feeling overall on the state of support and the state of the game as it stands? We'll go back in our order that we went. So, Emmy, hit us off. How are you feeling about the game?
Okay, so for the past 3 seasons, I felt miserable on support. But Pink Mercy dropped, and I started one-tricking Mercy, and I have never won so many games in my life just because of how many people are playing Mercy, I think, honestly, is why. And Pharah meta, so that
What
probably
do you mean you're
boosted the
winning?
wins.
You're winning because people are playing Mercy. Like, you're also playing Mercy.
Yeah, so like less people are playing like characters with more utility. So it's more of an even match, I feel like. I don't know. And also the Pharah meta I think helps.
Interesting. I mean, I'm sure the bird discussion will emerge. That's another one currently. Most recent social media outrage is perhaps directed at the flying character. But you're kind of happy with things overall, or?
I don't think so. I think I'm just very lucky with the drop of Mercy that I'm getting good games, or of Pink Mercy that I'm getting good games. I don't know. I've been miserable for the past 3 seasons, and I can't really place my finger on it. I'm not sure what exactly the issue is.
Well, maybe one of these guys will have a more direct answer. KarQ, bless
Yeah.
you. How are you feeling? Are you happy?
Here
Are
goes
you
someone else.
miserable?
I'm in a
Okay,
sneeze. I'm in a sneeze
KarQ's
circle right now.
Guys, pray for KarQ. He's having a sneeze moment. Hello guys, SCB here, and the Group Up podcast is back, and I'd like to take just 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about 2 quick things. Firstly, Patreon. If you enjoy the content, then please do consider supporting directly, because Patreon takes only about 10% of the money you give, where YouTube and Twitch take 40 and 50% respectively. So if you'd like to support the podcast, then that is the best way to do so. Secondly, if you're someone who enjoys video essays or detailed analysis of movies, TV, or anime, then please do check out my second channel, The Soak, where I'll be making videos about those kind of topics much more frequently, and where a lot of my attention will go beyond just Overwatch. It would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would check it out. But that's it for now. Let's head back to the discussion. Custa.
I'm getting started to bless him. Hang on.
Yeah.
How about
yeah,
you?
I'll go. I've actually felt okay on support. I feel from someone who usually plays a lot of main support, I feel like we've kind of moved out of Lucio jail a little bit as of recent times with some other things changing. So I think you're going back. We're playing a lot of Ana, which I enjoy. Like Ana's like really propped up even in NA. As I said earlier, I think the support lineup overall, I think when I say they're in a pretty good spot, I think it's more just like the pick rates are pretty balanced. I think every support hero has a place in the game. But, you know, my take from like the top end, I don't think, I would say the 3 worst supports are Moira, Mercy, Lifeweaver. And I'm okay with that. I like, you know, they're heroes that people enjoy. I think they are fine heroes, but at the top ranks, they can't be played consistently and effectively. They're more like niche. So I think that's where like supports need to be in the game, and like especially in those orders. I know some people aren't going to love that, but even like Alec has sort of talked about that in some of his interviews. Like these heroes, they want them to be in the game, they want them to be powerful, but they don't want them to be dominant or meta at the high rank. So I think they've actually hit that pretty good balance. Overall, with the state of the game, I think if you looked at Twitter, it feels like it's this like toxic hellscape and like this is the worst place we've ever been. But I actually think the game's in an okay spot right now. I think that there's a lot of different heroes being played. Obviously, tanks are in a bit of a problem, and that is an issue that needs to be solved. But, you know, people are like, Pharah's been meta for like a month, and people are ready to burn that hero into the ground, even though Sojin only just left meta for the first time in a long time. So I'm actually okay with where we're at. I think the balance cycling and how things are moving back and forth is pretty solid. So honestly, I don't really have any major complaints.
Interesting. I mean, that's nice to hear. The hellscape you're describing is just Twitter. I think that's just Twitter.
Yeah. But that's also reinforced
hellscape.
by all those things. Yeah, like people just people are very mad all the time right now, and it feels like, and there's justifiably so, but I don't think we've definitely been in worse places, I guess is my take.
Sure. Sure. I mean, it's good. We got a little bit of spectrum. We got Emmy, who's kind of been a bit miserable for a few seasons. We've got Custa, who's like, I'm pretty happy. I'm all right. KarQ, where do you land as this part of the support entourage? And bless you. I hope you're better now.
I'm good. Yeah. Got the sneezes out. To be honest, I didn't mind Kiriko watch for a little while because she was good. I mean, she's always been good, but like I genuinely didn't mind it for season 9. I kind of just burnt myself out. I think I really enjoyed the season 9 change with like all the HP and the projectile size stuff, and then I played the shit out of that entire season, and then I got burnt out by season 10. Like regardless of how the state of the game was, I just didn't touch it because I was simply 600 games later of ranked. I was like, all right, I need to chill. And now with season 11, I have been playing again, and honestly, I'm kind of with Custa. The game has been in worse states, and so far it's not that bad. I'd much rather play against Afara versus some of the other problematic heroes we had for a while, to be quite honest with you. I'm tired of like playing against Tracer Watch, to be honest, like as a support player, because I have to like save my cooldowns and like be wary of her and constantly mark her as like a Kiriko or whatnot. And with Tracer being played a little bit less, Tracer's not still pretty good. There's no other hero that can do what she does, but with a lot more Pharah and Flyers kind of being the thing with Cass as well, and less Tracers, I mean, there's less threats to me, and I feel like I can sort of enjoy support right now. Mostly a lot more Ana as well, because that fits in pretty well, and I can pressure the Pharah a little bit. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with Custa. It's okay right now for me.
Okay. It's okay, says KarQ as well. We brought some very content creators here. Although it is interesting because last time when we did the great DPS debate, I started off and I was like, yo, how you guys feeling? And they were like, yeah, pretty good, actually, pretty good. Game's pretty good. And then like half an hour and they were like, fuck this thing. And also fuck the other thing. And also the third thing, this game is fucking dog. I fucking hate everything. So we'll see how long the happiness lasts. AVRL, you said you've played low support, but relatively from the outside looking in, how are you feeling?
You gotta let the trauma build up a little bit. For some people, they've suppressed it down. You gotta let them unsweep it out from under the rug. They're like, that's right. That's the thing I didn't like about the game. I remember now. So clearly they haven't deleted Mercy yet, so I'm not very happy. No. I think the support's generally been in a pretty good state since like release. I mean, that was the only time in recent history, at least in Overwatch 2 history, where support probably didn't feel that good categorically. But since then, I think generally when we talk about the power level of the 3 roles, support's been either really strong in some of the earlier seasons to now is just like in an okay place. Probably not incredibly strong or weak. I don't think support's really ever felt weak except for the launch of Overwatch 2, right? I think the only real issues for support maybe recently and still is like what KarQ said. It's a lot of Kiriko watch, a lot of Lucio from Custa's POV as well. So there's probably like not an insane amount of variety if you want to like especially play high ranked or high level Overwatch. Now, if you're just kind of dicking around, you can just lock in whatever you want. But I think support probably as a category feels fine as long as Ana is playable. That's generally where I've kind of landed. And KarQ kind of brought that up as well. You can start playing a little bit more Ana. And I think in maybe the previous couple of seasons, previous couple of metas, Ana's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit, especially given that Kiriko is still in the game. I think there's still some problematic abilities and mechanics from support, like just the fact that things like Immortality Field and Suzu, the main talking points. Should these abilities still exist? I think there's still a couple of leftover things that are still weird in this role as well. Damage boosting in particular is one. I'm just going over the stuff that like basically I've kind of brought up at some point, me being on this show in previous episodes, things that have like kind of bothered me. They still are in the game. I don't know if Blizzard will ever do anything about them. I don't know if anything can really be done about them properly either. And then you have the issue where like, there are just a couple of heroes that probably just never really get any playtime of a serious manner. Anyway, you got the Illaris and the Lifeweavers of the world where, despite being the newest support heroes, probably still see some of the least playtime. So I don't know if that's a real issue. To me, it's like, okay, well, some heroes in the game, regardless of what role they are, probably just not going to get that much playtime, and they're not going to be that popular, and they're not going to be that strong, and maybe that's okay.
I'm liking that AVRL kind of checkmarked all the things that people have complained about and disliked, and I think we can definitely touch on some of them. But there is a question that kind of brought up listening to you guys talk, is that it always feels like there is some sense of oppositionalism between the roles. Like it always feels like someone is happy and someone's unhappy. Like someone's gain comes at someone else's loss. So, AVRL alludes to launch Overwatch or launch Overwatch 2, where it's like, well, supports are suffering, but everyone else seems kind of happy. Like tank players certainly were the most happiest, I would guess, back then. DPS players seemed a little bit happier. Support players least happy. Then there came an era where maybe support players were the happiest, and they're like, we got nice shit and we're strong role. And then other people were like, ah. Now it feels like maybe you guys are kind of alluding to, well, we were stuck in a lot of Tracer watch and this, that, the other was bothering me. Does it have to be that way? Like, does it always have to be? There's going to be like a period where there's a winner and there's a period when there's a loser, or is this
Actually, real quick?
Yeah.
On that, just something that came up to me. I think it's between DPS and support. I don't know how tank fits in that equation, but if you really think about it, when support's really strong, DPS are probably complaining. Like the same period of time in the seasons when support was considered really strong, it's like, oh, this role can do it all. They damage, they heal, they keep everyone alive and all that. DPS were like, what is my role? My role just doesn't exist. And then season 9 happens, and the healing reduction on the passive arrives, and then suddenly the power levels shift a little bit. Now DPS feels really strong. And then if you remember Overwatch 2 release, part of the reason why support felt weak was because DPS was really strong, especially with the movement passive, especially on like flanking heroes like Tracer. They could get in, and especially with the lack of an off tank, they could get in and really destroy supports. So I think the seesaw is probably not much to do with tanks, and typically like DPS strong, support probably not very good. Support very good, DPS probably not very good, because when you think about it, it's like if your DPS is good, they're killing everybody, they're killing supports a lot. When support's really strong, no one's dying, and so DPS feel like their role doesn't exist. So that's what I think it is.
Interesting take. I'll go to KarQ. KarQ, do you agree with that assessment from AVRL, or do you have your own version of what is, or do you even disagree? Do you think it doesn't have to be this way?
No, I think it has to be this way. You're never going to be able to please everybody. 3 separate roles, 3 different identities, 3 different, key things they have to do to accomplish on their role. And whether when one thing's strong, the other the hard recipients of it will always have something to complain about. So I guess if you do open up Twitter or go on social media, you'll just find different groups of people complaining depending on what's strong right now. So I mentioned how I don't actually mind playing against Pharah, because I play a lot of hit scan supports. I play the BAP, I play the Ana, I play the Illari now, and I saw a couple of complaints about the Pharah meta, and it was the Lucio players and some of the and just, let me rephrase that. Yeah, it was mostly Lucio players that I saw complain about the Pharah, specifically when only talking about supports. I didn't see too much of the other DPS complaints. Some DPS players always complain about everything, so it's all just one clump to me. But specifically, I don't recall these Lucio players complaining about Pharah until now, but that's probably because their hero doesn't do very well against Pharah, or can't really mark the Pharah in the similar way that a hit scan support can. So I don't know. I just don't think there'll ever be a perfect harmony like the Avatar once had. You know what I mean? It's just gonna, when one thing, if a certain archetype is strong, there's gonna be a receiving end that doesn't deal with it very well, and then they're gonna start complaining, and we're just gonna always be teeter-tottering between that. Just my take, though.
I'll piggy bank onto that, because it's kind of one of those things that people look for this, as KarQ said, perfect harmony that just doesn't exist in any multiplayer game ever. Because if even there's 1%, if there's 1% of power gained on one side, or perceived level of power on one side, people are going to be upset. There's no game out there where everyone's like, this is perfect. It's always going to be a constant back and forth, and that's what the balanced team
Counter-Strike
is always trying to combat. Yeah, what do you mean Counter-Strike? There's
exactly
always
the same.
Yeah, but there's also people still complain about that kind of stuff. People played CS throughout the history of time. People are complaining about certain things being too strong, all those types of things. So it's yeah, and the only way you get that is if you just literally make everything equal, which Overwatch is just never going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's one of those things of I think I understand why there is frustrations. We've all gone through our levels of frustration, right? I agree, Pharah is frustrating as hell to play against right now, but I guess my take is that as long as it's quick, and I think the balance team is being quick, they do a mid-season patch that usually shakes things up and moves the winners and losers, and then they do a big one at every season. Things are moving. If Pharah is still good in a month or two, then yeah, I'll get my pitchfork and I'll jump on that hate train, right? But as long as they're just like being quick with everything, that's what I think needs to be important, because it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to, solve all the problems. I would rather us look and talk about the things that have been long-term issues like tanks and stuff like that, or like certain heroes. Like something that I don't think we've gotten enough credit for is I actually think Kiriko has fallen out of the meta a little bit. Still quite strong, but I think they've really been doing incremental changes to Kiriko to try and bring her in line with the rest of the support roster. And I think she's kind of there now, right? Like that's why we're making this decision. Hey, maybe Ana's better to play than Kiriko in certain situations, and that's why we're having this different balance. So I think there needs to be credit there, and I think that's why I feel like the support lineup's in a pretty good spot, regardless of what's going on with some of the other roles.
I will say the salt must emerge from me a little bit, which is that you're right, I guess to some extent the credit must be given, but if it's another, I hear Samito's voice in my head, like a Brigitte 11 patches later, she's still meta. Like, is that a really credit moment where it's like 11 patches later?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Kiriko is finally not perma pick. Okay, yeah, good job, guys.
And she's still very, very.
So, but would you say she's in line? Because like, would you prefer them to be incrementally changed and like slowly changed? Like, because they're trying to find the power of like where she is. And something that we have heard from them in the past is that Kiriko is not hard meta across all ranks, right? Like that is the issue. Like, how do you fix Kiriko without making her bad? People love to complain that Kiriko is broken in like gold, but she's not, right? She's broken more at the top ranks. And I think I would rather than do what they're doing to Kiriko than do what they did to Sojin, which, and Orisa eventually, where they had to just kill the character, right? Like Sojin is dead right now. Orisa is dead right now. Sorry.
They had to do that, the Sojourn, because she was meta for so long, no?
Yeah, but that's because they couldn't end up coming up with a solution, right? So then they do have to kill it, right? Like, so I think the worst case scenario, that's like the emergency button of like, we don't know how to fix this over a short amount of time. Like how many times have they nerfed Sojin to try and like pull her in line? And eventually they have to hit the emergency button where this hero is just bad now. Like they did that to Orisa, they did that to Sojin. And I think that's important. I would rather they do what they did with Kiriko. Obviously, we can all agree it lasted too long. She had way too much fucking power for too long. I'm not saying that like this was the ideal scenario. She was being good since the beginning of time, but I would much prefer they make smaller changes to try and solve the problem and put the win rate to a more balanced spot rather than doing these like overhauling things. Like people wanted to just like completely change Suzu, which would make Kiriko just not a good hero, right? And I think that's not a good solution either. There needs to be a balance there of like, yes, we need to nerf this hero, but it can't just be a sledgehammer every single time and then just knock it off at the knees and this hero just doesn't really exist anymore. That's sort of my take.
I actually think the part of the reason why these heroes end up being meta is because they're just, very safe picks that are, I think, generally speaking, pretty well designed outside of maybe Suzu being problematic. When you look at what Kiriko brings to the table, especially, she does everything. She's got some of the best survivability in the game, some of the best mobility in the game, really respectable damage, actually, like incredibly good burst damage, very strong ultimate, and then an MO on top of that. And Suzu is in some ways more flexible to use and better to use in Immortality Field, depending on the situation. So she's just good in general because of those reasons. You've just given the one hero a lot of access to a lot of different tools and a lot of like different things that you can do. And in many ways, I think Sojin is also just like these both, by the way, I think pretty high skill ceiling heroes for what it's worth. And we're talking about the mechanics of the game. And so to me, it was never like a pure numbers problem. Like when I look at these heroes, I'm not like, wow, the numbers are just overtuned. Maybe at like launch Overwatch, you're like looking at Sojin, like, okay, the rail damage is probably a little much. And I for a while at the beginning, because I'm pretty big anti one shots in this game. And so I was like, okay, cool, we can get rid of the one shot, but to do that, you probably have to like, maybe remove the headshot on the rail. And they compromised and said, okay, we'll reduce the multiplier on the rail headshots. Like, okay, fine, well that does enough work. You've now removed the one shot in various ways, and then that got removed further in season 9. To the point where I actually thought Sojin was in a good place post season 9. She felt really fair to play against. So I'm like, I'm surprised she got nerfed again, because I'm like, well, why nerf her again? It's like she's already in a fair place to me. But the reason she gets played is because she's a good general hero with good overall strengths, very good for high skill ceiling mechanics, which means like, the balance is within your ability to play the hero itself. And I thought that's fine. Like, that's probably the way the game should be if it was up to me. If that's what I think the perfect game is. And then they just kind of, I don't know if they sledgehammered her, but they hit her hard enough that she's not really picked reliably anymore. And I just think that's quite sad. And so, yeah, like the reason these heroes are meta is not, in my opinion, because of the numbers. I don't look at like anything on Kiriko and think, oh, the numbers are huge right now. It's just her overall kit. She just does a lot of things. And it's kind of Overwatch 2 syndrome as well, where you can start to see in the new heroes they can just do more. They have maybe more well-rounded kits, more interesting kits, or maybe it's just power creep in general for the design is where it is, because you start looking at some of the earlier designs, especially in earlier Overwatch, where you're like, man, these heroes are falling behind compared to new releases. So that's partially what it is as well.
So
yeah,
you guys
I think that's the main issue is that, sorry.
So I just want to just make a broader point, which is that you guys have been very polite, but feel free now to start jumping in if you hear something that you're like, oh, I really want to respond to that point, and then I will try and control the chaos. So on that note, Emmy, I was going to go to you anyway, so you take the lead.
I think that's where the main point of frustration comes from, is that the new characters can do everything and old characters can't do everything. So the only solution is, well, we got to nerf these heroes to the ground because my character can't do all that stuff. Not that that's necessarily the solution, but that's the main point of frustration.
A lot of the newer ones do have a pretty loaded kit, except for like Illari. I think she came out pretty simple.
Yeah.
And that's one of the better designed ones. But yeah, we know. Like Lifeweaver, friggin' Venture's blend of abilities, and Mauga with 2 weapons and all these ha-has and all these, ability interactions does get a little complex. But on the note of Kiri, I'd actually argue that Swift Step is actually a bigger problem than Suzu. Is kind of what makes her do what she can do. The Suzu complements it because she can TP to wherever she wants and use it. But like the fact that the TP used to be at least 7 seconds, now got nerfed to 8 seconds. I'd argue like 10 seconds, and it actually might be 9 or 10 seconds. And then it might be a little bit less oppressive at the high ranks. That won't solve her still being bad in the lower ranks, but I think it's because she can be everywhere all at once, and get that free to get out of jail card or whatever, where you can just contest a random angle very aggressively and just TP out with no punishment, right? When it was 7 seconds, you do that, and then by the time somebody on the enemy team marks you because like you're really up and aggressive, you TP out 7, 6, 5, and then they try to capitalize on that window of you having no TP. It's probably back up by the time you back up a little bit, Suzu, stall for a little bit, and then you have your next TP again. And I think that's probably something they need to tackle for that. But yeah, go ahead.
Because I agree with you, and I actually think I said this on your podcast in the past as well, SBB. Maybe I didn't, but like I've been saying as well, the thing that I think would really hurt Kiriko, because the thing we need to tackle is she's very strong at higher ranks, but from what we've heard, she's not that good at lower ranks, right? Because her kit just doesn't do as much if you're not using it to its fullest extent. So I think another change you could do to nerf Swift Step is if you reduce the range of it, that is something that really would hurt people at high ranks, because one of the big things that makes Kiriko very strong is you can play at an off angle and always be near your team. But if you reduce the range of it, let's say you reduce it by 20%, then you keep it at the 8-second cooldown, all of a sudden that's a lot more dangerous to do because you can't TP as far away from the enemies as well. You can't play as far away from them as well. And then all of a sudden she starts getting brought in line, and that also deals with the like mobility creep that she has, where she just plays in fucking Narnia on her own, 2 taps the other supports and then TPs back to her team, right? Like that's, in my opinion, the direction they need to go. The other thing I would nerf with Kiriko, if you're really trying to bring her in line, I've already said that I think she's somewhat okay. I think the heal of the Suzu does way too much, even if it doesn't cleanse. It's like 80 if it doesn't cleanse. Like that seems too
110
much.
If it does, yeah.
110 if it does. Like I think if you bring that down to like 60 and 90, I think that really starts to like play in it's not just an oh shit get out of jail free card. Because how many times, we're support players, we play Kiriko, you double dink the other Kiriko and then they just Suzu themselves and they're back up to like 100 and something health. They don't really have the threats that they should have when they just have Suzu available. So I think if you can pull those 2 things together, yes, her kit is loaded to the fucking 9s, and that's a problem, but I think at least she'd be a little bit more balanced.
There's a couple of lines of thinking. You just either hit the raw number with the cooldown, or in your case, shorten the distance, or maybe require line of sight.
I think that would kill her, though.
Pretty bad too.
Yeah, that'd be brutal.
But then the cooldown would be shorter or something. A couple of ways to approach that, and probably cut the cheesy like spawn TP. Like, you know how like Ball can't grapple out of spawn?
Yeah.
It's like
That makes her a huge character for contesting.
Yeah,
because of how
like
far she can TP.
the biggest, the egregious example I can think of is like Gibraltar attack. If your team's fighting like the end of the checkpoint of first and you die, you can spawn and TP straight to the server room if somebody's in there, and it's like, oh, okay, she's back.
Same on third. Right, like you can just TP, you go to the door, and then you just fucking
it's
TP.
the TP straight to Suzu. It's just like boom, you just now bam Suzu. That's the game changer.
Yeah, people swap right to it at the end to stall, like Hollywood anywhere. Exactly. Like I'm not even playing Kiriko, but then I'll have to swap to that because I'm the first stall out, and it's like one of the best ones to swap to for that reason.
Yeah. By the way, you guys were talking about like potentially flirting with the idea of requiring line of sight for TP. My pushback on that would be just like, well, that just makes it better Guardian Angel. You know, like functionally that's just Guardian Angel again, and I don't think we need that. Like. That's probably not the right direction either. But it's a hard one. I think one of the fundamental balance challenges of Overwatch, if we're not even just looking at how the three roles interact, even if you just look at within one role, is the fact that some heroes are going to be better in higher ranks, or maybe they're better in lower ranks, and it's going to be a challenge to balance for ranks because different things are strong at different places. This is why
I think that's okay though.
That's exactly what I was
you said.
thinking.
I think that's okay though.
Well, it's more okay when the heroes self-balance by their skill ceiling, or like maybe the skill floor is a better requirement. This is why I think Tracer has had a lot of time in meta, but probably doesn't get complained about that much compared to, I think Sojin got a lot more complaints than Tracer, and it's because it's just way harder to play. It's just got a way more difficult skill floor to reach to be viable, and so you actually have to be quite good. So a lot of the balance comes with your own skill. It's like the character's balanced based on how good you are at the game, less so than the amount of stats that the character has.
Also, another thing I'd like to add at this point, I've been enjoying listening to you guys just talk, but just on this point, I do find it bizarre, the whole win rate complaint about like, well, they're not winning in gold, because I never ever think that was something we discussed about Tracer ever. I cannot think of a single time in the history of Overwatch where people were like, you know what, people aren't popping off on Tracer in gold, man. We need to do something about it. Like, why do we apply this to like a lot of the new heroes? We apply it to Sojourn, we apply it to Kiriko. We would never apply this retroactively to one of the original heroes because we just accepted that like this is a high skill hero. Yeah, nobody should be
that's how
playing
it should
Tracer
be.
in silver. Go ahead, Emmy.
That's how it should be. You should have like a character, their skill ceiling should be higher so you can climb higher whenever you utilize their kit to the fullest potential. That's how a character should be built. That's why people are the rank that they are, because they're not using the kit to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
I think the counterpoint to what you're saying there, SVP, is it's like, I think what I'm trying to say is because like at the top ranks, we've been asking for these Kiriko nerfs for like a really long time. Is the player base asking for big Kiriko nerfs, right? And I think Tracer has had times in the past where like she's been good against all ranks just because of like the way that she's played, but I don't know if that's true for Kiriko. Like I don't really hear a lot of people complaining about that hero. Generally, the heroes that the lower ranks complain about are like your Moiras and stuff like that, right? Where they just get free value because they just exist. So I think I agree that I think in general when a game first comes out, you're more willing to just accept its flaws because it's new and this is what it is. But now as we understand the game better, when new things come out that we're just like, nope, that shit's fucking broken, then we're more likely to be more vocal about it. Because as you said, everyone's just kind of accepted that Tracer, but also Tracer's just really fucking fun to play. And I actually think isn't that oppressive to play against. I would say the one thing that Kiriko really hurts, same thing can be applied to Sojin, same thing can be applied to Malga, is they're just not fun to play against because it feels like you just can't really deal with any of the problems that they're doing. And if they're popping off, then you just lose, I guess. And I think that's where a lot of the pain points exist with those heroes.
I think you've kind of nailed it there. I think it's a lot to do with fairness. I think obviously there's always going to be some Overwatch 1 bias amongst all of us who have played since Overwatch 1. But I can say pretty conclusively that objectively Tracer is fairer to fight than a Kiriko, right? Like it's like I don't think there's any debate on that issue where there's just like more you can do. And I think the problem with Kiriko specifically, and I think this is a good wider point to make about the game, I hope it's a lesson for the developers of like, when releasing new heroes, I 100% appreciate that it's a game, you gotta market it, you gotta sell it, you need the new hero to do something cool and fun and unique. They gave her like 3 cool and fun and unique things. Instead of just giving her one and keeping it at that, and just being like, hey, she could teleport through walls. How about that? And that would be the one cool, unique thing. They were like, she could teleport through walls. Also, she makes people intangible, something no one's ever done. And also, she can cleanse people, something no one outside of Zarya, even Zarya isn't the same. Also, her ult increases your attack speed and your cooldown speed and your movement speed. It's like, hold up, guys. Like, wait. We don't need her to do, like, every part of her kit to do something unique. Even her headshot multiplier was unique on launch, wasn't it? It was like 3 times. So they were just like, because I suppose it was the launch Overwatch 2 hero, right? Kiriko was the hero that launched Overwatch 2. They were like, favorite child, we gotta give her every fucking thing, and then every skin too, so that she'll never beat the favorite child allegations. But I hope that's a lesson for them to, like, in the future, I get it, you're gonna, because now we're dealing with the problem of, as AVRL alluded to and all of you guys have alluded to, it's impossible to balance her numbers because the things are fundamentally broken. Like, to teleport through a wall fundamentally beats a lot of the core mechanics of Overwatch because nobody else can do that. To make people intangible beats the core mechanics while being able to fight back because the previously intangible heroes, Reaper, Moira, they can't do anything while they're intangible. But this one can. She can continue to shoot you back, or someone else can shoot you back.
I have a question for you, SVB. Do you think they've learned that lesson? Just on that tangent. Because, like, think about when Kiriko came out, and now we're looking at the heroes we've had, the last few heroes. Like, their kits aren't as juiced up as Kiriko. Do you think that's, like, we're starting to see? Because we know they have long development cycles, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if we can even say that because we know how long they keep heroes in development. So we'll maybe see that starting soon. All right, go ahead, AVRL.
I think no, because obviously look at the development cycle of the heroes, but also I think they don't have the same philosophy for heroes. They clearly have, like, you know, different design philosophies when it comes to, I think Kiriko versus Mauga is like the most obvious one because they're both Overwatch 2 heroes, which means they're both like new as far as the Overwatch life cycle is, but they're fundamentally different in design in terms of direction. When you look at Kiri, she's way more well-rounded. She's got way more like different utility and different features to the kit, whereas Malga's the complete opposite in the other direction, where it's just like, no, this guy just does one thing and he does it better than anyone in the entire game. And controversially, I actually think Kiri's design is way healthy for the game, because as much as it is like a problem right now that's like, well, this hero just does everything, and maybe that's why she's meta. It's not a numbers problem, she just does everything. Maybe you could tune the numbers a little bit. You talked about Suzu healing, etc., but really it's about how much she does. Now, I think that wouldn't be a problem if every other hero could do that. The problem is, and part of the reason we have a counter watch situation, and this is especially true for tanks, is that when you have these ultra specialized heroes that are so damn good at one thing, if they're any good at all, especially in the numbers game, that's how you get Amalgamata, where Amalgam just dominates. Because now this hero is like, you can't really beat this hero because he's the best at what he does, and he just shreds tanks. So you just got to play Malga versus Malga. Whereas I would prefer the game to be like, everyone is more similar to Kiriko design, where she can just kind of do it all. And when you have a hero that is way more generalized in terms of the utility in the game or what they offer in the game as far as their kits go, first of all, I think that's probably leading towards a higher skill game, which is what I would prefer. But also, then you have a situation where I think that actually improves the balance of the game, because now you don't have a situation where this hero is, if you looked at like a stat chart, like a spider graph, like what are the strengths and weaknesses? One hero is like, Malga's like, boom, I'm like S-tier, like shredding other tanks, and I just suck at everything else, whatever, right? Now you have a counter watch situation where like, oh well, I'm just gonna pick Malga versus Winston or blah 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 blah. I'm just gonna pick this versus that because I know this guy's really good against that guy in this specific matchup because of these mechanics. Whereas if everyone, you just flatten out the spider graph where like everything's about B tier, I'm just B tier like everything in the game, you kind of get rid of the countering a lot, because now everyone's just kind of more generalized. You can do more things. I actually think it's a more interesting way to design the heroes anyway, because having more options, again, raises the skill ceiling and makes the hero more interesting, rather than like, I'm just going to dominate in one very specific niche. So yeah, I think the game would be better if everyone's designed based off Kiri versus especially compared to Malga, which is bad.
KarQ, I'm going to take it to you. Haven't heard from you in a while. Where do you land on this?
So, well, Avril, you're saying you really like it when the design is really leaning into like a more well-rounded generalist kit versus.
Correct.
Like,
I just think that's better for the game.
Very well.
I think that's better for the game, because then you have like, you know, the do one thing very well type of design means you're either going to dominate a meta or you're just going to be complete trash.
I can actually see where you're coming from. Yeah,
and it leads into counter watch. You do extremely good at one thing. I'm just going to pick this to counter you because I'm good at this one thing versus your thing.
Where do you land on this, KarQ? Because we've kind of alluded to a few different points about like, well, this is how they designed Kiriko. This is, the new heroes. Emmy talked about like, well, all
Yeah,
the
I'm
new
trying to
heroes
think
can
of
do
like
incredible
the
things.
other newer releases as well. Illari does the the hit scan poke thing really well, and she wasn't played, and then now she's like very good. And then you have kind of like Lifeweaver where he's just kind of like the whole time because he just does one thing really well, which is just healing. I can actually
Illari's
see where
numbers
you're
are
kind
just
of going.
slowly bumped up patch after patch. No, like she's received a lot of actually nerfs. Buffs over time.
But then I think if you do that, you kind of
right?
homogenize it. Yeah, but then if you like just
That's the trick, guys. The trick is you have to homogenize the game, sadly, because the issue is the more like unique and the more you do, because the more that's fundamentally like in terms of game balance theory, the most balanced games, and I'm not saying Overwatch has to be this, but the most balanced games are the games where everyone's basically identical. You all do the same thing. You can't complain about balance issues when you're the same Counter-Strike man throwing the same grenade and using the same guns. Now you complain about gun balance instead. That's the only difference, right? But that's what I'm talking about. So I'm not saying it should be Counter-Strike, but I am saying like you need to flatten the strength of the roles and the strength of the heroes down more, so everyone's kind of doing more of the same thing, and that will actually improve balance. Which is why, by the way, I have the insane, not to bring it to a tank discussion, but I have the insane take that tanks need to be close to DPS because tanks are the biggest outlier. I think if you brought all the outliers in, then you'd have an easier balancing situation in the game.
I want to
maybe better on balance. I'll say one last thing. It's like maybe it could solve like a bit of balance. Like you're right in that theory if everything's a bit flatter, but then you run into the issue of, I guess, like player experience and fun. Is it actually more fun when everything is a bit more like there's no, if it doesn't feel like there's much variety, if everybody can do everything, then I don't know.
Still have,
I feel like I slightly disagree with that, but I see where you're coming from. But like I don't know if I'd agree.
I think you're assuming.
Experience.
AVRL, I'm just gonna let the
yeah.
others go for a while. I appreciate you giving your takes. I just wanted to let the others vibe. Custa, go ahead, and then Emmy will go to you next.
I think the underrated thing about what KarQ is like alluding to is like a lot of people play Overwatch because they like to play the ha-ha silly man and they like having fun. Not everyone cares about the pure balance of the game. Some people just want to play fucking Junkrat. People play Junkrat even when he's in the gutter. Sometimes they play him when he's good. People like playing Symmetra. I think if you generalize everyone's kits, I think the identity of what players like to play and why certain people enjoy this game goes out the window. Something that's always been a discussion about Overwatch is this a balanceable game if you keep trying to insert and inject the fun into it, right? And I think that's what the developers are really struggling with is it's like they could probably make a very balanced game, but you would take a lot of the heart and soul away from Overwatch.
I don't agree.
If that's the direction you went. Okay.
Really?
And I agree. Like, I think you're a competitive guy. You want the balance. I completely agree and understand your take. Hey, I'm that way as well.
I just want to defend real quick. The thing, I think you guys are assuming it'll be way more homogenized than it is. I'm not saying the game should be Counter-Strike. I think everyone like always has this, not you guys in particular, but people always have an extreme view, just generally out there of like, you say something, it's like, oh, we want the game to be a little bit more phrased. Oh, you want Call of Duty? No, it's not what I said. No, guys, I'm not saying Counter-Strike. I'm saying like, you want to give more generalization just means like, let's give a bit more, imagine Malga with a little bit more utility and like less. If you just brought his like S curve down and just brought his other strengths up a little bit, and I'm not talking about deleting character identity here. I'm not talking about deleting what makes characters like particularly unique. You still have different lore. You still have the art design. I think the art design carries the uniqueness a lot in this game. Something that you have to like really get met. It's like it's not just in the hero kit itself. You brought up Symmetra, Scott. I think Symmetras have so much to complain about. If you actually look at what the Symmetra players are saying, they are like in shambles. Patch after patch, season after season, they're like in absolute shambles. They hate the game, right? Because their character's been weak the whole time. It's like you talk about what's fun and what's not. The problem is no one. Yeah, you want to play your character for fun. You want to play Junkrat, but no one likes losing because losing is not fun. And unfortunately, if your character's Simmer, you just lose. You're not having fun, even if you like the gameplay.
But I guess the point that I'm saying is there are these people where their hero is in the gutter. The balance of this hero is completely trash, yet they still play Symmetra only. Because like that's my point is like some people just love heroes for the sake thing. I agree. In a world, there would be a play that you homogenize. Let me go to an example. How do you make Lifeweaver more homogenized while also keeping the playstyle that's certain? Because some people just love playing Lifeweaver. They just love. My job is I'm just going to heal people and pull people when they get low and put people on pedals. How do you homogenize Lifeweaver without removing that identity that why people probably like playing Lifeweaver? because some people just don't want to do DPS. The same thing with Mercy players. They don't want to aim. They just like to play that. Like, I think that's where you get difficulty, and like, how do you homogenize this without taking away that core identity of why people love these heroes?
I think they're definitely Mercy play. I don't know. Actually, I need to be careful here because I don't know all their opinions, but can't remember what Scaredy. I don't know. Does Scaredy like the fact that Mercy is just a heal bot? I think she actually doesn't,
never.
but I don't want to misquote her.
But that's her. Scaredy doesn't represent just all the Mercy play, right? Like, yes, Scaredy is a great Mercy player who wants to be able to do more and have effectiveness. You know, we see these Mercy pink bundles. There's so many fucking Mercy players who just like to play Mercy and they don't want it to get more difficult or that. They just want their hero to be better. They don't want to lose their identity. And I like, maybe I'm wrong. I could be off base here, but I like, that's just sort of what the line that I'm thinking of. Like, you can't just always think about skill balance.
You can't have your cake and eat it too in this situation where it's like, if that's the game we want, then people can't complain about balance the way they do. Unfortunately, if you want a balanced game,
well, they're two different parties. That's the point.
Yeah, it's two different parties. It's like,
no, they want both though. The people want to be able to play their sim and their Mercy while having a balanced game. It's like, I want my hero to be minimum 55% win rate while playing this crap here. It's like, well, no, guys. Like, I mean, the design of the game just fundamentally disagrees with you. It's like, do you want your game to be balanced or not? If you want your game to be balanced, you can't have like these heroes with insane outlier skill sets and abilities where like something they do is just insane S tier. If you want to end Counterwatch, guys, I think a lot of people want to end Counterwatch. Guess what? You're gonna have to like shift down the power levels where like people are peaking and just you know, in the hero itself, balance it over in terms of their strengths.
I'll make one wider point, then I want to go to Emmy because I haven't heard Emmy in a while. The wider point I'm gonna make is that there is a bias of the norm to forget that no matter what Overwatch we're in, people are unhappy on some deep and core fundamental level, right? So like, we might suggest that if you do what, let's say for AVRL, I'm not even saying whether I agree or disagree with AVRL. Let's say we suggest going in the direction of AVRL. People will be like, well, people are going to be unhappy. Well, people are unhappy now. There's people not playing Overwatch now because of the way it is. So yes, you may make some people unhappy by going in X direction, but people are already unhappy because we went in Y direction. And I do think the job of the developers is to make the tough call to say, this is the direction. This is the one that's like making a better game overall that we believe in. If I had a complaint overall with the direction of Overwatch, it would be that I don't see what the direction is. I do think we've tried to have our cake and eat it too for so long that we've kind of ended up in this very middle of the road, uninspiring kind of situation where I'm not sure that the joy of Overwatch, at least me personally, I feel like the joy of Overwatch has slipped away for a long time, where the thrill of playing the game is kind of gone, because I'm not really sure what the point of it is. Like, if I try and take it seriously, I always get upset by some really BS thing in the game. I'm like, that's just fucking BS. Like, why is that even here? And then if I take it casually, I'm like, it's not really wacky enough for me to be having casual fun. Like, it's not like Marvel Rivals where I'm like, it's kind of stupid, but hey, that's the whole point. It's kind of stupid. So that's my POV, but I do want to take it to Emmy now. Emmy, your thoughts on all of this?
I think I'm actually in the middle. I definitely see where AVRL is coming from. I'm a person that has always said we should take roles and like make them those roles. So like, if you want a tank, you make it more like a tank role. You want a DPS, you make it a DPS. If you want a support, then make it a support. So I think with AVRL's idea of balancing, that would work out a lot better for putting players into more specific roles for the game. But as somebody that plays pretty much every support, I really like the fact that they all have different kits and that I can swap to like Mercy whenever I just feel like, you know, flying around and not aiming on Ana and just chilling for a little bit. But I don't know if you meant like make everybody do literally everything, or if you meant like just round out their kits just a little bit more. So like giving a character like one extra ability that like cleanses or something, rather than letting them do everything that every other character does.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
When they added the right click for Winston, I think that dynamically changed his gameplay a lot. To be like,
Yes,
what was
okay,
one of
so-
Winston's weaknesses? He was like really bad at range. So they rounded out his weaknesses. Like, well, you can do something at range now. You can actually impact the game at range. So that's maybe more what I'm talking about. Maybe you could
Yes.
go a little bit further in that direction. That's what I'm saying. Is like, I think when people hear me, they tend to immediately go to like, well, you just want this game to be X game or whatever. It's like, no. I'm not saying
I think
we're
that's
going to
what it was
delete.
interpreted.
We're not going to
as.
delete all the uniqueness out of the heroes, like not entirely. But you are going to like round out some like, okay, what are my F tier stats? What are my S tier stats? Let's bring the S tier down to like a B. Let's bring the F down up to like a C or a B as well if we can, and just make everything like more generalized in that kind of way in terms of your options and your abilities in your kit. So you still have a lot of uniqueness. As I said as well, the art direction of the game really carries the uniqueness as well. Like really, really, really carries the uniqueness, and I think that's pretty underrated, regardless of like the actual gameplay itself. And so for Mercy, it would be like, well, give her more damage options so she doesn't have to be a heal bot, stuff like that. When you look at Kiriko, why is she good? Because she just does so much stuff.
But that's the point that I was trying to make. Is it's like the Mercy players like playing Mercy because they don't do damage like that, and like this is like where the two camps are. Like I completely agree with you. My favorite way of playing Mercy is triage Mercy. I like getting in there. I like healing tanks. I like pistoling people. I like having fun. I like going for the risky reses. But that is not true for I would say most of the Mercy players. So how do you solve that problem?
Hypothetically, if we just I don't know what it is, but if we hypothetically just added a damage ability into the game for Mercy, probably not the corp explosion, but whatever you want in your mind that you think is fair, let's just put into the game. Is that now suddenly a negative for Mercy players? Let's not change anything about Mercy. Mercy completely the same, but she has one more ability that allows her to actively do damage to the game. Is that now a negative for Mercy players?
But okay,
nothing else has been taken away. I haven't reduced her healing. Just gave her one new ability.
If you give her a damage, if you just gave Mercy a damage ability, let's say we gave her you just point in someone's general direction and I shoot a small little AoE, kind of like the Mirror Watch, fucking AC 130. How do you balance Mercy then? Because all of a sudden you've given her a power that you haven't taken anything away from her.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. You bring down the other abilities. So like you tune something else down then. To give her.
If you give her that, then you need to do something else.
I actually do agree with AVRL.
We gave Winston a brand new right click for what? You could argue the same thing. It's like,
his right click is also kind of like, as you say, if you want to make it that's something that's like almost very relevant, like the right click is very good when paired with certain things. When you jump, you zap, you land, you do all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, the Winston right click doesn't really change the gameplay of his thing because it doesn't do that much damage, right?
Yeah, but
so
you
like
could use
that's cool. That's balanced.
Yeah,
you
could use the same idea for other characters. You could give
you want to give her something
that.
So when she's charged someone, it is very similar to what you're saying. You guys would like if you gave her like when she's charged to someone, she can shoot a little bit, and that'll do a little bit of damage. Maybe you make it relative to the healing or the damage boosting, something like. That's what you want? Okay.
It's like rounding a character out, but want to do it with the whole cast so that it's not counter swap over and over and over.
Okay. So, Amy, you've been converted. You've been converted a little bit.
Actually,
yes, I have. Yeah. Now that I understand the point of view.
The more I think about it, I can see where Avral's coming from now. Sorry, you're right. I was kind of thinking of an extreme, like where you use like super homogenized versus exactly.
And that is the natural.
The Winston example was good. That was a really good example. Sorry.
Yes. No, I was gonna say it's a natural response actually. Like I think it is just the way we are as humans. Like when someone suggests something new, people are like, oh, they go to the most extreme version of the idea they can find. So if like you suggest what AVRL said, like if AVRL's like, let's make tanks more like their roles, people are gonna be like, well, he's talking about just fucking ruining them as tanks overall. Or I've seen this with hero bans. People are like, can we get hero bans? We're like, oh, so you want like 15 bans, and what the fuck am I gonna play? It could just be one. It could just be two. It doesn't have to be like the extreme end of it.
It's ironically one of the things that Sam and I like really agree on is like we think both tanks should be brought more in line, reduce their HP, make them more killable, etc. But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't know what it is. And the Mercy example is like a good one because she's a highly picked hero, highly beloved hero, and a hero that I think the devs are really scared to make any changes to. Although that being said, clearly they're experimenting with stuff behind the scenes because of Mirror Watch. We know they use these extra arcade game modes and the quick play hacks to actually experiment in the game to see what they can do. And clearly they have in their mind as well, like, hey, what else can we do with Mercy? Because like the heal botting style is, in my opinion, not healthy for the game. And I think if you listen to certain prolific Mercy voices in the community, and Skitsy was brought up by me, I don't think she's particularly happy with that style of gameplay either. And like I said, I don't think you have to delete her identity in terms of her heal botting playstyle, but if you just added some sort of damage, but again, I don't know what. I can't offer like a good design thing, like, yeah, give her this. I don't know what it is, but if she did do that without really killing everything else, then it's just like, hey, here's an extra thing you can do, like Winston right click. That's the world I'm looking at.
Hey, I guess the one thing I would bring in that I would counter that, because you actually did bring up Sam, and I saw a tweet of him recently. Do we enter into a world of power creep? Are we going into the thing of like, if everyone's powerful, then no, like if we're all superheroes, no one's a superhero, right? Like, because that's what he was saying. D.Va does so much now, right? She has so much armor. She takes less hit ranks. Her rockets do a lot of damage. Her spread's gotten tightened. So the problem that you run into if you start giving everyone everything, everyone becomes like super OP. Is that kind of like the direction that you want? If you want to make everyone super rounded, we talk about Kiriko power creep. Is that kind of where that's the direction you want to go?
That's design creep. That's not power creep. It's design creep because she's got more options, more abilities, more things she can bring to the table. Power would be if all those things were like the numbers were crazy. And maybe at some point the numbers were too high. But to me, that's more design creep than power creep. And I think that's fine. I think the design creep is more. Let me say this: the design creep is more obvious. You complain about heroes like Kiriko more. It's like, why can she do everything? And the reason that's like a negative thing and it's a point of contention is because then it's a comparison to every other hero before that couldn't do everything, right? It exposes the I wouldn't say bad designs, but very basic designs of the original heroes, rather than anything else. To me, it's not about bringing Kiriko should do less. It's more me like, or maybe everyone else should do more, because I think that's a more fun way to play the game. And also, I think that's ironically, an easier balance situation, despite there being more abilities in the game.
So I'll ask for any last thoughts on this particular topic about like the design of heroes overall, but also supports, before we move on to another topic. KarQ, gonna go again for you. Haven't heard from you too much recently. You kind of had a little bit of time to think about it. Any insights from your side?
Well, with that line of thinking, then I was just like thinking in my head, like, what could they do for Lifeweaver? So like maybe cut down some of the healing extremes and give them a little better DPS. Like get rid of bring up the F tier part of his kit, which is the damage, and bring down the S tier, which is the healing. And then for Illari, I think they actually kind of did that, but she's a little high up right now because like what was she really good at? The whole like off angle poke with the pylon and whatnot. But then they kind of reduced the power of that by cutting the healing for Illari specifically to kind of like lean her identity into kind of playing the pylon with the team, and then keeps her in range to heal the tank. But then I think you might need to cut down on another aspect of it, which is just like maybe the raw healing. It's a little too strong. So anyways, I don't really have too much to add. I think the more I think about it, the more I understand to help with the competitive side. But again, it kind of does lean back to the theory on what the goals are. Are we truly balancing for like competitive players, or just keeping it casual and making sure that people just have fun with the game?
I don't think it has to be a choice. I think you can do both. I think if you lean the game towards a more skill ceiling game, which is and one of the ways you give more skill ceiling is by actually giving more utility and options, and you balance for the higher skill ceiling, for the higher level players, then the idea is that the game shouldn't maybe on like the real basic level, people are like, oh man, like my hero is being balanced for X and Y rank above me, that doesn't even impact me. But it's like, well, no, you have skill ceiling to yet attain and improve on. And if you, in an ideal world where you get better at the game, the hero gets better for you as well. Like I think the hero skill ceiling should be in and of itself part of the balancing. It's like a self-balancing thing. So if you were, I think a lot of people like it's balancing for either you or me, and it's kind of the zero sum game. Or actually, I just don't agree. I think like if you did actually just balance for the top ranks, everyone else will kind of like
fall into place,
float above and fall into place as they get better at the game. But you have to like admit that like, okay, the reason I'm losing is not because my hero is imbalanced, but it's probably because I'm lacking something. I'm not particularly good at the game, or I'm not very good at this. And if you improve that, you'd improve your win rate. It's not necessarily a balance issue for that.
And I think that continues the fun of the game, is that you have something to work towards.
I agree. Custa, you had something.
Yeah, I guess I think this is where I have just like a disagreement, and I think this is something that's like never going to change, because I think I don't agree with just making everything more complex and more well-rounded. Hey, I would love that shit. I've been playing this game. I would love for more toys to play with. I'd love for heroes to be able to do more, right? But does that remove the approachability of the game? We're already running into an issue where a lot of people, it's free to play. They try and come into this game. There's a billion fucking maps. There's now 30 plus heroes. If you add way more complexity, way more depth to make the balance of this game better, does that remove, people who want to just come in? Like, yes, Avril, you said you're like, people want to improve and get better at the game. Most people don't play video games for that reason. Like, they don't. They want to have fun. And yes, they want to improve and they want to.
They shouldn't care about balance. They should have zero opinion about balance then.
Yeah, okay, but they shouldn't care about balance. But if I come into this game, one of the reasons that a lot of MOBAs have issues, like let's use Dota as a great example. You try playing Dota, that shit is fucking hard to play, right? And like, if you want to make Overwatch very MOBA, very chaotic, very complex, that's great for the people that love that game, right? But there's a reason why a lot of people don't play those games, just because they're complex. And like, I'm not saying we shouldn't add good balance and we shouldn't have some complexity, but I guess maybe somehow I've ended up, vouching for the casuals who I've talked to. I have so many friends that I've made who played Overwatch back in the day, and they're like, bro, there's so many heroes now, and there's so much shit going on the screen. I just don't get it. And I played with them. They're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not having fun. I'm going to stop playing. And I think that's the audience that we don't really think about when we talk about these kind of things, because we're not, we don't care about them, right? That's not us. But
I care about
that's
them a lot,
who the devs have to think about.
I think about them a lot, actually, because I think like their situation in the game influences a lot of balance and design issues. But are you talking about new players? I think if the matchmaker actually works, the new players are going up against other new players. You're playing against other people that are probably still learning the game and learning the kits itself.
But it's not about winning or losing, Avril. It's about being overwhelmed. It's about not knowing what the fuck's going on your screen, right? It's not
everyone
about...
else doesn't know either. You're also going.
Yeah,
to a
so
game
everyone's just fucking running around like headless chickens and not having fun.
So I want to say, I'll just step in here because I feel there's a wider point that I want to say anyways. Whether it needs to be said or not is up to you guys to decide. And I 100% understand where Custa's coming from, and I think it's an important distinction to bring up, because I think always in all discussions we are always biased by our experience as year-long players. We're just kind of like, we see our tunnel. The people listening to this podcast are clearly invested in the game. I think the more I look at it, though, I think it is like the sort of vision that we have in our head of like is casual player who like is gonna hop in and try Overwatch is kind of actually impossible. It's kind of like a fallacy. I actually don't think it's possible to make a game like Overwatch and not cater to people who are gonna grind it. Because if you're gonna cater it to the people who are gonna hop in and out, that's like a completely different style of game, right? Like any game like that, look at the environment. It has a really short life cycle, right? If it's like a Among Us, if it's like a Fall Guys, if it's like some whatever other party casual game you wanna mention, they have like a month, 2 months. The better ones will be a little bit longer, but eventually the novelty wears off and they die. Because if the novelty is the thing, if the wackiness, the fun is the thing, eventually that runs out. And unless you keep doing that. So I think if Overwatch was to do that, the way to do that would be to make April Fool patches like all the time. Be like once a month. There's an April Fool's patch where like everything is crazy. It's just wild. Just go in there, have fun. There's not really a idea of what needs to happen 10 games down the line, because the 10 games that you played were fun enough. I think
they also have arcade games for that, in my opinion.
You mean Overwatch?
Yeah.
Right. Well, there is that. But I do think if you're going to create a live service game, like I'm just looking at the environment, right? There's maybe a possibility that I'm missing that hasn't been done. Like maybe what Custa's alluding to here can be done and hasn't been done. But I can't think of a single live service game that Overwatch is trying to be that does the like, we're going to be really casual and like everybody can hop in and do whatever. Like the overwhelming...
Fortnite does that. And that's what makes Fortnite. That's why Fortnite is successful. Like you look at their collaborations. I installed Fortnite 3 months ago or 6 months ago because they put in the avatar shit. I came in, they put in waterbending. That shit was broken as fuck. I had so much fun running around waterbending the fuck out of people, and I spent some money on the game. And
I
so
was
did all my
overwhelmed
friends.
by Fortnite. Just saying.
No, but like the no builds. No, but that's the point. Is they removed building. Now no build is actually one of the more popular ways that they play, and they have these like random things. I was Spider-Man one time. I was flying around. I was shooting people.
But like, can we
but
keep
they
up
still
with...
have both game modes, right?
Bits and pieces, but I think their no build stuff I think is more popular than their build stuff.
Even
and that's sort of the point. They went the opposite way of Overwatch, or at least what you're talking about.
But the bigger question is, can we keep up with Fortnite's output? Like,
no,
can we-
I'm not saying we need to be Fortnite. Like, as
No, no,
okay,
but even in theory, like, would we like any? I don't think any development, and like, it didn't happen. Like,
you know
Fortnite
what?
wasn't that way by design. It's like they were so popular that they had the resources to keep pumping out new content. I don't think any other game can reach that.
I think we should be Fortnite because you know what? Fortnite's a completely homogenized game where everyone does the same thing. There are no roles. So they don't have balance issues. The balance issues are all in the items and the drops and the weird Thanos gauntlets that drop in the game. That's where the balance issues come from. But ultimately, you're the same dude you drop in. You're the exact same dude as everyone else. There's no one's complaining about your balance of your characters in that game. I'll tell you that.
Can I an example that I want to actually bring up that I think is more relevant to right now and actually very relevant to Overwatch is Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals came out recently and they said we are not going to be focusing on pure balance for this game. Like, because if you all played Marvel Rivals, that game was not balanced at all. That game was fun. You run around, you shoot people, but they're like I was just looking at it, I'm like, this couldn't be balanced. Like you have the combo things, you have the ultimates, you have tanks. They're playing fucking 3-3 already, and the game's been out for like 2 months in a beta, right? So and that's fine if that's one of the thing. And they were very open about like, hey, we understand that this would be purely balanceable, but we think it's more fun and more approachable if we just people want to play Spider-Man, right? And so I think that is kind of the direction that Marvel Rivals is going to. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but like that's the philosophy. I think their philosophy sort of aligns with what I was sort of talking about, where it's like sometimes you need to just cater to the casuals because it's probably a larger audience and probably people who are going to pay more money.
But you can't compare Marvel Rivals to Overwatch because it's not even out of beta. It's like we gotta compare it to we gotta compare it to the games that are of its own. Like how many other games are 8 years old? That's the games we gotta compare it to.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something about Marvel's Rivals real quick? Is that let's see what happens in about a year's time. Let's see what happens because the problem is they want to go down the like we don't care about balance philosophy. Guess what? They've unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for us, they've inherited probably the whiniest part of the Overwatch community. Because when you look at, I'm not joking by the way, you look at their like socials and you look at who interacts with their stuff and you look at their Reddit, it's all people that fundamentally just hate Overwatch. It's like, I'm an Overwatch hater. I'm here because I hate Overwatch. It's like, that's the unifying thing for all of them, for the most part. Some of them actually genuinely just like the game. Most of them just hate Overwatch. So they've actually inherited, most of the people that hate Overwatch are the hardcore Overwatch 1 people that have left the game. So they've inherited, when I say they've inherited the whiniest part of the Overwatch community, I don't tell a single lie that they genuinely have. And so you're going to see this game a year, 2 years down the line, and those exact same people are going to come through and complain the hardest about balance. They're going to complain the most hardest about everything in the game. And yeah, they'll probably ruin the game for Marvel Rivals. And suddenly you'll see actually balance is important. You know why I know balance is important? Because I know for that specific audience, they love to harp on balance more than anything. So they're going to rip that game to shreds. Give it a year or two, you'll see what I mean.
I agree with that. I think in the short term that it's a little short sighted. They're like, oh, see, it's way better. It's so much more fun than Overwatch. Haha. But then, it's because it hasn't been solved yet, like the comps. Once they solve the comps, like some fixed compositions like Rocket Raccoon with like Groot or whatever, it like loses the amount of or limits the amount of iterations of different comps. Once people figure out hard meta, then the complaints are going to start rolling out. So you have to give it a bit of time, let it marinate once the novelty wears off, and then I do think balance is something they have to look at. And
wait for the honeymoon period to go away. You see what happens.
Exactly, the honeymoon period.
I think my big point. Sorry, I thought you were finished. No, you could keep going, KarQ.
No, good.
Oh, okay, sorry. The point is, don't cater to those people because they're all those people are unpleasable. Right? Yeah, we all agree those people are never going to be happy with any game they ever play. They're going to keep complaining on Twitter about any game that they go to. We know there's that Valve shooter coming out. I'm sure everyone's going to jump ship to that game and play that game until they hate that game as well, right? Like that's just the nature of gamers. My point is that you're never going to be able to please those people. Why would you not at least go towards your wider audience that potentially don't care perfectly about balance? Yes, you should. Marvel Rivals, they are going to balance their game, right? They're going to keep it somewhat in line, but I think the point that I'm saying is they're not going to go in with we need to take these fun parts out of, these people's kits. We need to, add a roll lock because, that's what the more balanced idea. Let's make it so that people have fun. Overwatch is a great example. When everyone had the most fun at Overwatch, I think we can all agree it was 2016, 2017. Right, like when the game first came out.
During the honeymoon period.
Yeah, but I agree. I 100%. But that's also when it was the most imbalanced, right? Like it's not always going to be just like the most balanced time is when everyone has the most fun. Most people don't purely care about balance. Most people don't look at tier lists. Most people don't know what it's saying. Most people just want to jump on a game and have fun. And yes, there needs to be a balance between catering to those people, catering to the dedicated player base of your thing. And that's what I think the developers are doing. They're trying and they're doing that for us. They're listening to us. They talk to us. They talked to Spylo recently. They are making changes that we want. But you also need to accept that you can't just do that for the top end, because there are people at the lower end who
I don't know where we
agree with
disagree. I don't know where we disagree, because the thing is, like, yes, they don't care. So what's the problem? If they don't care, they'll just play the game.
Because no, it's not about not caring about balance. It's caring about the fun, right? Because balance doesn't always mean
not fun.
Because that's not. But the point of what I said about heroes, man, like Lifeweaver. Okay, no, you go. I'm good. I made my point. Sorry, you go.
Sorry. People. The balance is one of the main points of contention for why people think the game is not fun, or like certain parts of, like, at least that's where I think fundamentally things come from. You know, if people like, oh, this role isn't fun, maybe tank's not fun. It's like fundamentally it's not balanced against the rest of the cast, or it's not balanced against the holistic view of the game. So I think balance is like actually pretty important for these types of games. And again, you brought games like Fortnite. The reason why this stuff isn't complained about in Fortnite, because Fortnite doesn't have the same balance issues, because the game is 100% homogenized. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, games like Fall Guys are not going to have balanced issues. Even if you want to play Fall Guys as like a hyper competitive play for some reason, you wouldn't have any balance issue, because you're the same little jelly bean as everybody else. You do the exact same thing. So yeah, if you are a casual player who actually truly doesn't care about balance, and I actually agree, I think that's like most of the casual players, you just want to jump in and jump out, then what does any of it matter? Like I don't anymore, because the game frustrated me for other reasons, but I used to play League of Legends super casually, especially if I just popped into ARAM and didn't care about Summoner's Rift. And to me, I never bothered looking at a patch note. When a patch note drops and all the serious league people were fuming, I was like, oh, this character got 5 more attack, and I was like, I can't tell the difference. I have no clue. I don't know what any of this balance does, because I only play the game hyper casually, at least did. And so the patch notes literally irrelevant to me. So if the patch notes for casual players in this game were completely irrelevant, they're actually having the purest experience of the game, where they can truly just jump in the game and just play what they want and not care about balance at all, and completely remove that from their mind. And therefore, you know, I don't see what the issue for them is. I don't think it's a zero-sum game where, like, if you balance for the high end, or if you actually care about balance, somehow their experience suffers. I don't think their experience suffers at all, actually. I just think they're just going to jump in and play regardless, because they don't really care about the balance. That's a good thing. I think less people should care about the balance.
I think there's like I think the impasse actually between, and feel free to disagree if I end up putting words in anyone's mouth, but I think the impasse between Custa and AVRL actually is just maybe terminology, because I think what we're confusing a balance and design a little bit here. I think what Custa's talking about is that people fell in love with certain aspects of Overwatch heroes, and like people like Lifeweaver heal botting, and that's something that he's saying, like, well, we need to preserve the things that draw people to the game. I think what AVRL you're talking about is, well, we can still design something that allows them to continue to do that, but allows the players who want to do more to do more. And all of those are still...
counterpointers.
Yeah.
Because yes, but also it's like, oh, we're going to preserve that because that's what keeps people attracted to the game. Well, I also say it's maybe something that pushes people out of the game as well. It's like you can't say like this thing attracts people to the game without saying, well, like, what about the people that just don't like that? What about the people that, you know, the amount of people that this game has lost for X or Y or Z reasons, you know? I'm sure we've lost plenty of people for various reasons as well. We don't, you know, we talk about like, let's keep the game for the people that like the Lifeweaver heal bonus. Like, do we? Or would we actually have more success if we didn't do that?
Right. Custa, is anything else you want to add? I want to make a bigger picture point again, but is there anything you want to?
No, I'm good. I've made my point. Like I as I said, like I think we are at like just different sides of the coin.
Sure.
And I think that, and there's always going to be people who agree on different sides of the coin.
No, 100% agree, and I actually really value that you brought that take, because it would have been really boring if all of us, the rest of us, was like, yeah, good job, AVRL, good shit, and then, you know, like whatever, we just move on. So I'm actually glad that you brought that other opinion. I again, that hopefully not tangenting too much, but just because it's brought up now, I just want to emphasize what I was saying as well, which is that I feel personally that the battle pass model is like, you're designing yourself into a system where you need to cater to the people who will grind your game, because otherwise, why would they like you're like, let's follow the chain of command, right? Battle pass, you pay $10, you got, well, you want to finish the battle pass because you want to feel like you got some value for your money. The battle pass itself is no content. There's no content in the battle pass per se, Like, I'm not going to count the cosmetic as content because you still got to go play Overwatch afterwards if you want the content, if you want the cosmetic. So you still have to make people satisfied with playing and grinding Overwatch, and it's not going to be anything particularly different. Like, I don't think the content coming out is on the scale of a new game, which is what AVRL is talking about as well, like Marvel Rivals or any game. Ironically, if we wanted to go this way, it would have been with a box model. It would have been with like what Destiny does, where it's like, we're not going to release anything for like 3 months, guys. And then when we come out, here's a new dungeon, whatever, 30 hours, 40 hours of content, whatever the number is, pay for the
Ironically,
content.
Destiny also have battle passes.
Right, but the major content, right, comes in these chunks. It's like you play the chunk, everyone comes in for that first day. On that first day, everyone's going crazy. They're like, oh my god, new Destiny, whatever dungeon. Everyone plays it, and then, you know, a couple weeks later, we move on. Like, the cycle has finished. If Overwatch did that, sure, but we kind of know that they're not going to do that now. The whole Overwatch 2 debacle was the failure of this model. It was the failure of the idea that you would be able to get people to come in, pay 10, 15, even $5 to get a bunch of new hashtag content. They kind of looked at it and they were like, well, fuck, we can't put out at that cadence. We can't make people happy with what we put out. And in the day, the people giving us money are the people buying Reinhardt skins and Kiriko skins every day. So anyways, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I feel like the model is kind of pushing us anyways in the direction of like, well, it's got to be for the grinders, because only the grinders are going to care about what they look like as Mercy if they're still playing the same hero 5 hours later. KarQ, Emmy, any thoughts from your end before we move on and actually talk about some supports?
No, I agree with the beat a dead horse. I think it's just, I think there is a middle ground that you guys could probably agree on, but I think you're not like getting the verbiage that you both need from each other.
I don't think we disagree, actually. I think
I
actually
agree.
a lot.
I think you guys
You're just using the
actually
wrong words.
see a similar picture.
It's also okay to disagree. Like, it's okay if they have different
yeah,
stances,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
They don't have to come to
I
agreement.
said, like, I think my take is that I obviously understand where I was coming from. I literally played pro for this game for like 6 years of my life, and that's the only thing I ever asked for the developers was to fix the game, right? But as someone who has definitely moved away from that space and has surrounded myself with a lot more other people, I understand why certain decisions are made and why certain things don't happen. And I think that's where I come from. I agree there's definitely a moderate middle ground, and I think that's what the fucking developers are trying to hit. But I think one of the big issues that you run into when you try and shoot the middle is that you end up displeasing both sides, and then everyone hates your game, right? And that's kind of where we were at certain points. So, you know, we'll see how they go. Like, I agree their philosophy seems to be dynamically changing, right? And we'll see if that continues to happen.
Yeah, I think well said. KarQ?
Nothing to add. I think AVRL kind of cooked the more I listened to it. I'll be real with you.
That's good. I think Custa summarized it really well there,
all out.
actually, which is that, like, you know, you kind of, the nature of game development, you got to make tough calls, and like someone's pissed off, and the results justify what you did, right? Like, if you kind of make a decision and people love it, then you're a genius. You make a decision and people don't like it, you're a fucking idiot. What are you doing? Why do you have this job? So it's the brutal nature of game development. Okay, let's talk about some supports then, and let's go through each of our cast. Like, thankfully, unlike DPS, there isn't 50 bajillion characters to go through. There's only like a handful. So let's start. We'll go alphabetically. Let's start with Ana, who's already been talked about quite a bit from you guys. I'll go to KarQ first. KarQ, Ana, how would you describe the state of Ana, and how do you feel about her?
I think she's a lot better now. I think the armor changes in mid-season 10, arguably pretty massive for her for a couple of reasons. Number one, 30% damage reduction for armor back then made her 70 damage shots go down to like 49. The change now, her dot ignores it, so you do full damage on armor. So that's like, you know, you'd be like, oh, there's not that many armor targets in the game. Well, a lot of times you do, you know, chip away at the tank. Not much if there's no target to shoot at. It does contribute quite a bit to like building your ult a little quicker. And with armor being, you know, changed to, you know, where small instances of damage, you know, do a lot less. Like Tracer for me, as an Ana player, was really annoying. Tracer constantly marking me, applying that DPS passive. I self-nade myself. Like, I barely heal myself, right? So like that matchup got really rough with the DPS passive. But with armor being better, you know, the Brig bodyguard idea, works a bit more in Ana's favor because Brig, can soak up some damage even if the shield goes down. Throw some armor packs and makes like that synergy a little bit more ideal. Winston's fine right now, so you get that synergy. I mean, I think Ana's in a, arguably a top 2, top 3 support in this patch. So
Interesting.
and you can mark the Pharaohs. There's a lot of flyers right now, and you have no fall off damage. And then some of the hit scans like Cassidy, even though like Cass is a hit scan on paper, it's like, oh well, like I just Pharah plays so far and pokes so far away. I'm at max fall off range, so like I don't really like do as much to the Pharah in a lot of cases if they're playing it smart, of course. And I mean, I played it quite a bit the past like week, and I can't necessarily kill the Pharah, but I certainly have pressured them, which is why I was saying like I'm not really complaining about Pharah right now because it like works in my favor. But then Lucio players are a little frustrated because then I can't really do anything to kind of control her. But yeah, I like Ana right now.
Nice. Custa staying hydrated, dude. That's a fucking big tank. You refill that.
Hey, bro, stay hydrated.
You
You know,
chug
bunch
through
of fucking
that?
gamers.
God
Get the
damn,
2
I
liter boy
appreciate-
out there.
I appreciate that. That's some good health right there.
I need a sippy cup as well because I kept destroying keyboards and knocking water onto them as well.
Oh,
So.
dude, I do that. I do that. I need to baby proof my life, bro. I'm a fucking idiot. Emmy,
100%.
how about you? How do you feel about Ana?
She does feel better, but I still think she's like B tier, I would say. Maybe A, but I just feel like Bap does her job better, and Kiriko still exists, so it makes it hard to play Ana. And I actually find it harder to play Ana into Pharah now because Pharah just does the damage so quickly. It's so hard to like take her out or even scare her off before she kills you. And Bap just does it better. So why would I play Ana over Bap?
Yeah, it depends how far they are. Bap has pretty bad fall off range too. I see what you mean though, but like I think it depends
He's
how
just
the
more
Pharah's playing more than anything.
Yeah, he's just more self-sufficient too. Like MO, it's just better.
True. He has better self survivability, I agree, but
I think a lot of this comes down to like, sometimes the lobbies you get put in as well. It's like,
I'm playing in Diamond right now, so that is probably why I'm like more reliant on myself.
Right. I was going to say, I understand where Emmy's coming from because I think that like, again, maybe this is all completely wrong, and forgive me, this is like a false impression I'm painting, but I feel like KarQ's lobbies probably have another support who knows to peel for him when the Pharah starts going in, whereas Emmy's probably dealing with the, fuck it, climb yourself out of that elo type games where you just gotta like deal with the Pharah yourself. Like there's no pack coming your way when that rocket lands. So I think I get where you're coming from, Emmy.
Yes, the Brigs I get are frontlining with my tank for some reason.
And
I mean, dealing with an opposition is only like for me is just like a small part of Ana. The other part is like the synergy with the team, and there's a lot more things that are being played that complement her a bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten a lot more Winstons, and I think that's why she's bumped up probably for me.
I actually don't mind it with like with your own friendly Pharah because like I think most people agree you don't need to play Pharah right now with the Mercy anymore because you're not flying in open airspace anymore. So playing Ana with the Pharah, a friendly Pharah, it's actually kind of nice too. Just nanoing the Pharah.
I agree
letting
with
her
that.
do her own thing, and then I just duck into cover and just kind of hide for a while and just kind of wait and let my Pharah take some space, and then I can like hopefully openly shoot. Yes, it is a little rough if the Pharah is for free just shooting at you as an Ana, because if you're scoped in, you're not really moving very much, and yes, she can kill you very quickly if you're her target. But like maybe it's because like I'm playing it super safe. I'm only in mid-masters right now on support, so it's like the lobbies are a little different. Sometimes they like range into like the low GMs, but certainly not like high GM champion level lobby Pharaohs that I'm facing. So we'll have to see.
I think you'd be more mad again. It's like the graph of like that meme where it's like just shoot the Pharah at bronze, and then like at champion it's like just shoot the Pharah or something. This would be like the opposite. It'd be like, I fucking hate the Pharah in bronze, and then like there's the curve where KarQ's at where it's like, she's not that good, she's not that good. And then you get to like the fucking EU Middle Eastern invasion of the Pharah fucking flyers in your face. Everybody's dive bombing you, hitting every rocket, and you're just like, fucking nerf the Pharah. Custa, how about you? Where you land on this little bell curve that we've created?
Yeah, I think Ana's probably the best right now. And Pharah is just oppressive. I think that's kind of the issue. I think a good Pharah just wins the lobby. And I think that's really frustrating as as an Ana player. Generally, you want to play Ana, I think, in this meta. I think Ana's probably the best at even healing your own Pharah. You're able to play from range to be able to dodge as many rockets, but a good Pharah will literally just run at you. And then it all comes down to how you play around that. Overall, I just think Ana's really fun right now. I can play Ana, I'm happy. Even if it's not the best right now, there's not a lot of traces running around, which is nice. So that also makes your life a little bit easier as an Ana player. It's a lot of hit scan. So you can honestly just play really long effective range as Ana. And I think that's probably why we're seeing so much value from the hero. As KarQ said, Baptiste is also usually pretty good in this situation, but I think you run into the problem you're having to step way closer than you would prefer to be able to get that value. So I think Ana's just pretty nice. Depends on the map
and where she's playing.
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely a time. And I said this at the beginning of the podcast, I think the support lineups are in a really good spot. Ana has a lot of good maps because, escorts and hybrids are very, very good for her. But overall, I think Ana sort of gets weaknesses when you start playing faster maps. When you start playing Flashpoint and Control, I think Ana's healing does fall a little bit behind to your Baptiste and even your Kirikos at certain times. So I think there's a space for Ana, and I think I'd probably play. I think she plays 50% play rate for me right now, and even more if you look at between both supports, because I think Lucio's just not very good right now with how the game is being played, at least in ranked.
Before I talk about Ana, can I just ask real quick, are these Pharahs typically getting pocketed by Mercies, or are they just solo Pharahs? Your experience?
Sometimes
it comes down. Yeah.
Emmy?
But they do get a bit of resources.
I wonder how extreme the fire is. I was going to say if they're pocketed, they're probably way worse to play against.
A lot of them are pocketed because of Pink Mercy.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, Ana, I think I said this at the start of the pod, but when Ana is playable, I think the game was generally in a good state. I still think Ana is maybe to me the best designed support in the game and one of the most well designed heroes in the game, generally speaking. Super high skill ceiling, a really rewarding kit, and I think everything she does feels pretty fair because all of her really strong, powerful stuff all requires you to be skillful. It's all a skill shot. You have to really hit your targets and have good aim, etc., and have good timing and positioning. And so yeah, she's just a really good. I'm glad she's in the meta. When she's out of the meta, I think the game is just in a weird place. Man, you can't play Ana. Something must be wrong. So I'm just glad Ana is playable. She's definitely my favorite support hero to play and watch and everything as well. So yeah.
So there's a lot of pro Ana bias here in this call. So I'm gonna have to try and inject some anti Ana propaganda, which is that I think there is a school of people who are, and there's multiple things that I've seen why people dislike Ana. One is the same argument that you could label at the Sojourn Traces, which is this bitch is always around in Overwatch. Whatever time it is, Ana's been meta for so long in Overwatch's history. Why do we have to always have Ana? There's that school of thought. Another school of thought I think is I hear a lot of tank players say that well, she just pumps all her cooldowns into me, man. It's just fucking nightmarish getting slept and naded all the time, and the Ana is more oppressive to me than some of these other supports that people dislike. So how do you guys respond to those accusations?
Kiriko. Kiriko exists.
Do you want to elaborate on that, Emmy?
Everybody plays Kiri if you play Ana. Everybody, and you'll get Suzu'd out of nade every single time. Sleep, the cooldown is insanely short now, so I don't think sleep should be an issue significantly to tanks anymore.
You talking about the duration?
The duration,
yeah, it's
not the
yeah,
cooldown,
it's just a brief disruption. I don't think it's that. I guess it is okay, but
I feel like it's kind of fair. It's a long cooldown. It's a skill shot. You can certainly miss. I don't know whose sleep dart accuracy is in the 70 or 80s. Most people are much lower than that. So,
and even if you use it on the tank, your tank should be getting resources from your supports 9 out of 10 times. So you're probably gonna be okay.
Tanks also tanky enough now they don't just get blown up in the window. You get slept anymore.
Do you think that leads into one of the frustrations that tanks have is that their solution to dealing with Ana is they get help from the support from their team is Suzuing them or helping them? Because I think that's the frustration where it lies, that it's the skill shot onto tanks is not that high and the anti is also pretty easy to hit on tanks. So I understand where tanks get frustrated because it can feel just like an uphill battle that you're dependent on your own supports to be able to help you through it, which isn't always true. So like I understand why tanks hate Ana. I like a lot of Ana's kit is like Roadhog's running me down, I'm gonna go Ana. Winston keeps diving me, I'm gonna go Ana. All these things happen, I'm gonna go Ana, because like Ana is very self-sufficient against those kind of heroes, and you can at least fight for yourself. So I understand where that frustration rises. And I think even the developers have talked about it. Alex said so in the Spylo interview that they're looking at Ana sleep dart against tanks. So I'm kind of curious to see what that leads to.
I don't know if Ana sleep dart versus tanks is that much of an issue. I actually agree with Emmy here. It's just like, you don't get slept for that long. You typically tank enough to survive against it. It takes a pretty well-coordinated game, like a very high-level lobby, just to like completely burst down a tank in that time. I think tanks...
Yeah, you get woken up from it.
The tanks, are they more frustrated by sleep dart or anti-nade? Because I think anti should probably be the thing they're more frustrated about. Because sleep darts typically also lead into the anti, like they both come together. It's a package deal. And I want to bring up anti-nade a little bit here, because I think anti-nade actually exposes something deeply troubling about the game, in my opinion. And that is like, oh, you get antied, you can't get healed, your entire gameplay is ruined. And that's especially true as a tank. What that exposes is, oh, we're in a very pockety, like super heal body game. Like I think the game, in my opinion, Overwatch in general, is still just way too heal body. And you know, obviously it feels bad when you get anti because you can't get healed at all. It's like, well, duh, because the whole game is like you just get pumped with giga heals. And to even though Sam's not here, to his credit, and this is not like me saying one tank or two tank is better, but when there is only one tank, you do receive all the pressure. So it's like, yeah, you're a tank, and it's just gonna blow her entire kit on you because like you're the most obvious target. You're also the easiest to hit. So when we talk about like skill shots and you know how easy it is to hit a sleep dart or an anti, it's like, well, the easiest target is always going to be the tank. So you just end up receiving all the brunt of it, which is unfortunately how it goes. And you end up receiving all the damage, and you end up receiving all the healing, and thus we get into the tank debate again. But yeah, to shy away from that, that's where I'm going to stop.
It's a really interesting topic, Aaron. I always love how open you are to just being like, let's look at this fundamental part of Overwatch. I think that's needed. I think we need voices like yours, Avril, even if we don't always, you know, everyone doesn't always agree with each of those points. I do think we need, and even the 6v6 and all those debates, like, I think they are helpful, and kind of, we should poke at, like, are we sure we want to keep this in Overwatch? You know, the wise man knows that he knows nothing. Like, you must question everything. And I'll bring that question to you, because I think this is something we talked about in the Rivals debate, Avril, which is that, like, this is something the Rivals has. Like, there's very little healing output in that sense. Like, most of the time, like, most of the supports in Marvel Rivals are not healing that much. You're kind of managing for yourself. Is that...
Isn't Rivals is more insane healing than Overwatch.
You think? I was going to say, I completely disagree with that. Rivals was a lot of just maybe, like heal botting on support.
Maybe because I'm playing Black Panther and I'm just fucking in there. I didn't get a single fucking
I mean, I get
heal.
it. I play Magic, but when you play support, it's just like all healing.
Okay. Maybe
Marvel
my bad
Rivals
on
is
that
the game. Marvel Rivals is the game that makes you appreciate the DPS passive in Overwatch, genuinely. Because you're playing a Marvel Rivals, like, holy shit, the healing is insane in this game. Where's my 20% reduction? Give it to me now, you know? Anyway.
No, okay, that's right. My mystery again. My Black Panther experience, bro. I was just fucking lurking. I never got a heal. But is that then? What does that make you guys reflect on the experience of Overwatch? Like, are we happy with where it's at in terms of like how much healing gets done? Does it need to go more or less? Custa, I'll go to you first. You happy with like the amount of actual healing output put in the game?
You reduce healing output, I think that's when the tank players will be like, this is nice. And the support players go, yo, fuck this game. And then it swings in a completely different direction, because then all of a sudden, if all of a sudden you can't heal your tank or you can't heal people, then all of a sudden your impact goes to 0, right? And then it's like, well, then I'm going to be just playing Illari and playing on my own more often. And then you're just becoming a healing DPS. Sorry, my cat's playing with Toya on my left if you're hearing bonking all over the time. But yeah, like, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing, because I think there has been healing creep. I think there are heroes that can be pulled in a little bit, but I think if you start reducing it further than it is, especially with the DPS passive already in, like, I like the DPS passive. I think it gives DPS purpose and gives, you know, a reason to shoot the same thing. I think you start reducing healers' effectiveness, it's just going to feel very sad.
That's the thing. It's like, unfortunately, really quickly, unfortunately, that exposes the game design. It's like all supports of this game are just like how much they heal. That's the primary thing that you base their value on, is they can heal or not, like how much they heal. And I just think that's an issue with the game. That's why I was like, there's more utility, there's more other things you can do. It's VB and I have talked about this in previous episodes. It's like my ideal situation would be supports would just be like Dota and League of Legends, where you're way more based on utility and we're not playing a heal bot game. That's just me.
Personal vision. KarQ, where's your personal vision?
I mean, more utility and more CC would just probably end up frustrating more people as well. Like, I feel like people
It
just
doesn't have to be CC.
Well, what do you mean by utility then?
Yeah, how do you add utility that isn't CC?
So I would bring up
or
like,
damage reduction or
yes.
stuns, because that's what Dota does, right? Like everyone has slows, stuns,
Right.
shields, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it would be stuff like damage reduction. It would be stuff like, I mean, I think a Vengeful Spirit swap.
Vengeful
where it's
Spirit
like
swap.
You swap
Yeah,
swap
we landed
positions
with
with
gameplay straight
someone.
away.
Yeah, because that's like
Yeah,
a
like
great. I
fresh.
think it's just a great vision of what a support utility can be. It's like I swap positions with someone, I bail someone out at the cost of potentially my own life.
I do agree. A lot of utility ends up being stuns,
Yes,
and I
a
don't
lot
think
of
we
it
need
is
more
stuns,
stuns of the
right.
game. But like, for what it's worth as well, like it's, to talk about Ana more, it's like I still think anti-nade shouldn't be 100% heal reduction, but even then, just the fact that as I said, like if anti-nade ever feels frustrating, it just exposes how strong the healing still is in this game, and how not that it's strong, but how reliant we are on the healing in this game for the game to function. It's like the game functions only when there's a ton of healing. Like the game just fundamentally doesn't function unless the support's just out there like hardcore healing all the time.
So KarQ, you feel that that would be more frustrating if we moved away from healing so much. You feel like it'd be more frustrating for players.
Yes. I think anything that kind of inhibits a person's agency or ability to play, and they feel like they do something and then all of a sudden a person's location teleported. It's like, do we want Overwatch to become a MOBA where it gets complex like that? And that goes into the whole idea of like some of the design, not necessarily like the homogenizing part, but like the design and complexity of the designs turning off casual players. I mean, I'm on the boat with Custa earlier where like I don't touch Dota. I played a lot of League, but like Dota is just like the barrier to entry a little too much for someone like me, and like at this point in my life at least. And you really have to like, I mean, figure out like the kind of like core audience you're really working for and really balancing for. Like I somewhat like I'm kind of in the middle. Like there's good arguments on both. I remember AVRL was saying like you can satisfy both parties. I'm like maybe to a certain extent, but if you go into the direction of, let's say, this whole utility argument, like
you know what the game's actually doing? You can actually see this in the design in terms of like what they've done in the game so far, is they're moving supports more towards a damage position, because when you look at the actual release of the heroes, okay, Lifeweaver being the exception here, we look at Illari and Kiriko, and they've actually admitted this in their vlogs as well. They're trying to cater a little bit more towards a DPS style of game. And I actually think that's probably like a better way for the game to go as well, because one way that you probably, I'm the bigger like homogeneity train. I think one way you can sort of like brush down the roles a little bit and make them a little bit more similar is you give more DPS to the supports, so they're not just heal botting, and they can be more like Illari or Kiriko. That's probably going to make some people mad, that comment. But yeah, I mean, it's like there's a reason why they released Illari and Kiriko, and they and I'm not even joking, where verbatim they said, hey, these heroes will cater more to DPS players. You can find the dev logs, it's in there. They've literally said this, so yeah.
Yeah,
well, I mean, right now it just seems like they're just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, they tried the Lifeweaver approach, and they're trying a little bit of the thing approach.
Lifeweaver was weird. It's like they went damage, and they just went Lifeweaver. Was like, okay, what is this? Like,
well, this is again where like the development cycle is an influence, right? I think it's like who knows how long they were working on Lifeweaver? Who knows when they were planning on dropping him? Who knows when, while making Lifeweaver, they were like, actually, I think from now on we're gonna make DPS like supports. But we've kind of, I mean, we put so much time and effort into Lifeweaver, we may as well put this guy out now. Like, but whatever. Next time it won't be like that. So I think it's hard to say until like, I don't think the devs have had a direct philosophy for long enough for it to start to show in subsequent releases. Right now, we're still kind of all over the place. I think, and that's what we're seeing.
I mean, if they're starting to like lock in on a certain design philosophy now, we won't see the results of that for like another like year.
Exactly.
Based on how long like their dev cycle is. But in any case, I kind of agree. I think they didn't really have like a strong direction, because I mean the game was just it was fresh, brand new. There's more things they had to worry about with the shift to 5v5 initially, that they kind of just made a design that just sounded cool on paper. It's like, oh, this one sounds cool, let's do this. But now that the game's been out for kind of crazy, almost 2 years now, this October, they can really start narrowing down and honing in on that true identity and philosophy they really want to go with. And I really don't know what's right, to be honest with you. Like I've heard good bits from each side. I don't know.
And
a lot of good ideas.
And I do agree. I want to take it to Emily in a sec, but I do agree that like as much as I'm on the train that the complexity boat has sailed, like there's no way that any new player will not find Overwatch complex. Like it's impossible. Any game, Valorant. Like I tried getting back into Valorant. What the fuck is going on? There's like a fucking animal that sprays blue goop in my face, and like he diffuses or something. Like I don't even know, right? Like anytime you have these like new release heroes, like you're gonna get. But I do agree that like with MOBAs, it's ramped to the moon, and I think the benefit that they have that we don't have is Overwatch. I feel like the majority of people who play League and Dota are people who had once already played League and Dota. Like they're people who are coming in and out because they've had such a vast pool of people who have tried League, who have tried Dota, and don't mind. Like they'll go in phases of like a couple of years or years. They won't play for a while. I did this with Fitzy, right? Like I kind of tempted him back into the dark side. Like he was a Dota player for ages. Then I got back into Dota and I was like, yo, duo. And then he got like super addicted to Dota, grinded super hard. He's playing like suddenly he's playing more than me, right? Like I log on and he's been playing for 10 hours. He's still playing. And then, he's done. And then after a while, he'll be like, I'm over it. I'm back over it. And then, maybe 6 months later, he'll go back. We don't really have that. We don't really have, we had a lot of people once play Overwatch, but even now, you look at the numbers that they're talking about, like 100 million was reached by Apex in like a year or something like that, right? Like we reached 100 million players now. So I don't know if we have the vast pool of players to constantly pull in and out from that we can afford to make the game so complex that no one new will ever try it.
That's inevitable. Every single live service game will go down this pathway where it'll become too complex. Even if you didn't add any new abilities to any, if we just completely didn't do what I said, and we said, okay, we're not going to add any more new abilities to any characters because we don't want to make the game too complex. Well, guess what? Every single new season, every single new patch, every single new hero release makes the game more complex. Because if you're a brand new player, the argument will always stand, regardless of whether you're adding like abilities like I'm saying or not, or changing shit up in that way. If you're just simply adding more content to the game will be more complex, like minimum. You're going to get to a place where like, it's going to be too hard to jump into Fall Guys because there's 100 mini games now. If you haven't memorized all of them, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. It's going to be too hard to jump into any live service game at some stage, inevitably in the life cycle of the development, because that's just the nature of live service games. You can't avoid it.
I agree.
Yeah, we're always adding, not subtracting. So yeah.
Right. I agree. I agree with that. Unless we do no build, and then who knows? But Emmy,
but then no build has these gazillion weapons that have been added since. Like,
that's true.
I did play it like recently. I'm like, oh my god, what is this thing? There's like a juice that you can use for your teammates, and then you have these grappling guns and this car and that car. Even in no build, I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, it is. It is again. Yeah, you're right. It is just the nature of live service.
Yeah.
Emmy, on your point about the healing, we didn't get your thoughts on just the overall healing numbers in Overwatch.
I have always been on the side of give supports more utility than raw healing. I have always said that because I think it makes it more fun to play support that way. But I do feel like healing feels fine right now for what it is. But yeah, I'm always on the side of more utility for supports. But I'm a support main, so.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, not all support mains want, like some do want just more healing, so that's totally fine.
True.
Any more thoughts on this kind of area before we move back onto talking, and we'll go to Baptiste, I think is next chronologically or alphabetically.
Unfortunately, I think wanting more healing is probably unhealthy for the game, as much as they'll dislike me for saying that, because like the more healing there is in the game, like you're having a lot of fun, but no one's killing anything. You're just getting a situation where just the game is at a complete stalemate because shit just ain't dying. You want the game to be a fast-flowing deathmatchy game. As much as like even that word is probably maybe some people not gonna like. Yeah, you need the game to be flowing, people to be, going through the respawn waves, etc. So I don't think maybe
the skill ceiling if you're just heal botting.
And typically as well, the healing is easier to achieve and to mechanically achieve than the damage is. Like it costs a DPS player way more skill to deal the same amount of damage that you can heal as a support. So the stronger healing is, like, it's not an equal 1-to-1 exchange in terms of healing and damage. It takes more skill to do the damage and the healing. So when healing is really strong, then just all damage feels like crap. Yeah.
Custa, any thoughts before we move on?
No, I stick by what I said earlier. Like I think I don't think you need a buff or nerf healing right now. I think it's in a fine spot right now. I think the DPS passive is a good way to like tune it, and they sort of went down to 15, they went back up to 20. I think, yeah, I think healing is most relevant next to tanks, and I think it feels like in an okay spot now. We've got Orisa and Hog out of the meta. I also, one thing that I think is underrated about the way that they're dealing with the healing with the DPS passive is the DPS's abilities to kill supports has gone up dramatically. And I think that's very important because that was a big problem in the past where supports felt oppressive because DPS just couldn't kill supports. Like they could just heal each other and they could work together, or they had self-healing. So I think it's going in the right direction.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's move on then and go over to Baptiste. I'm gonna go to actually AVRL first. I never start with AVRL on these. So AVRL, how do you rate Bap's position right now in the game?
Actually, I don't know where I'd rate his position in the game. I think he's like I think the kit still looks good. I still have issues with immortality generally as like a mechanic in this game. But I think he's another well-designed hero. Beyond that, I think he's got a really good mix. He's probably like the best mix of damage and healing as a support in this game. He's the kind of hero that I think Team 4 wanted Illari to be. And obviously, but Bap just kind of is synonymous with being like the most DPS in terms of like, yeah, in terms of damage output, the most like DPS focused support that can also still heal and do a lot of stuff. He's actually got a lot of his kit as well. I think is typically good for the skill ceiling. Like he's got some movement, but not insane movement. The extra boost does add a lot of like interesting gameplay to the game. And then the healing is technically still a skill shot, even though it's an AoE that you typically aim on the ground. There's some easy bailout stuff. Like the bailout stuff, I'm just not a fan of. Like the shift is like really easy to just like pop that. It's like a second MO, and the MO in general, as I said, I still have problems with that kind of ability being in the game in the first place. But I still think like the game is fine with this hero, and I don't think this is like a hugely problematic hero as far as like game design goes. I don't really particularly know where he is in the game right now. I don't probably have the same amount of hours that everyone else has in the game to like really get a good feel for like, is this hero in the meta or not? But he was played a decent amount, at least at like a super high pro level. He was still like featured a decent amount.
KarQ, how about you? How are you feeling about Bappy Boy?
He's like B+. I think it's personal preference, to be honest with you. I think he's a bit more favorable slightly than Kiriko right now. A lot of times it was like you could kind of like interchange between Kiriko or Bap and Brawl specifically. Like I think at DreamHack it was like some teams ran Bap Lucio, some teams ran Kiriko Lucio when they played like Malga Brawl, for example. But I mean, I think he's good. I think he's slots in a bit better to help contest Pharah a little bit more, since Pharah is kind of dominating. Yeah, I don't think like his abilities feel too bad right now. Yes, like Immortality Field and all these like complete invulnerability things like Suzu and Immortality Field is like something that people have been asking to tackle, but like because the other things have kind of been crept down, like the DPS passive kind of controlling the healing at bay a little bit, Baptiste overall doesn't feel bad to play. And I mean, I can't speak for people playing against Bap, but it feels okay to me. I mean, yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, you kind of were leaning towards the side where you were like, I feel like Bap just better than Ana, and like I'd rather pick him than Ana. So
yeah, I feel like he's above Ana just because of the mobility, the way he can deal with Pharah, Immortality Field, Regen Burst. I think all of it just does better than Ana currently. But again, I'm playing in Diamond right now where I have to be extremely self-reliant. So I kind of have to play a character where I can do it all. And I think it goes back to the point of characters that can do everything and characters that can't.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played too much support this season, but even I think my support's like Master 4 or something, but like I gravitate towards the Bap. But that's always been a personal preference. I just like the like how reliant you are on just yourself. Like you can just kind of you can shoot tanks, you can shoot DPS, you can shoot other supports, you can heal bot if you need to. You can clutch if you need to with your window, right? Like, okay, this shit's going bad. I drop a window, delete someone. I think there's a lot of flexibility.
There's also still a lot of Tracer being played in my rank and a lot of Sombra lately, like a ton of Sombra lately. And Bap just deals with Sombra way better than Ana does.
And I guess all of this speaks to like what I think all of you have said, that the flexibility of the supports. I think Custa, you making this point most is that you can kind of pick a lot in a different situation. Like it's very context dependent. There's nobody who's like, yeah, this is a dumpster pick, or this is like the standout. You have to pick this hero in every lobby. It's kind of like, oh, they're running this. It's this kind of map. My team's kind of running this. I'll go with the BAP option in this case. And Custa, is that how you view BAP as well at the moment?
I think BAP is kind of just unchained with like absolutely everything. I think BAP is probably the most well-rounded outside of survivability and mobility. And that's, I think, the biggest weakness of Baptiste compared to some of the other people that you would have. So Baptiste, you want to get closer for effective range because the damage fall-off is pretty brutal, and you want to be able to hit your heals effectively. But the problem is if you have to get close, especially in certain metas like this one, Pharah, that kind of stuff, you can just kind of get owned. So the problem is you have to get close, but then if you get too close, then you can die. That's why some people just default more towards Kiriko and Ana, especially at high ranks, because it's just like hard to stay alive. With that said, if you play Baptiste and you're good at Baptiste, your damage is just ridiculous. It's better than Moira's damage because it's more directional damage where that you can actually get finish kills. You have an immortality field. Your healing is probably the most in the game if people are playing in a group together. So I think Baptiste is one of those heroes that if the game slows down and it's not as much just like you can run down the supports, Baptiste will come back in a big way, as he always does. If we start playing Brawl, Baptiste will come back. I think the meta isn't like perfect for him right now, but you can definitely get away with Baptiste. I would put him more towards A tier. And I think that's primarily just in ranked. He's very self-sufficient. Like he can just play his own game. He can just like play around. He does a lot of healing, does a lot of damage. You have lamp for yourself. You can heal yourself. So I think Baptiste is very strong right now.
And any word real quick to just, because I know AVRL has brought up, like, I still have a problem with immortality, like, has any of your opinions shifted on stuff like immortality? And we'll get to Suzu as well, but sometimes people stay opposed to it and they're like, no, this is just fundamentally bad. But sometimes people are like, you know what, actually, with everything else that's been added, I'm okay with immortality. Like, it seems to work well enough in the game. So have any of you guys changed your opinions on immo? KarQ, I'll go to you first.
No, I think it's a necessary evil, or else you'll just run into like mobility creep if nothing keeps them in check, or like certain, maybe not mobility per se, but just certain aspects and certain archetypes will just dominate if you don't have like a bit of resistance from the support role. And then there's arguments that like all the utilities should be on tanks and then less on supports. I mean, you can go in a lot of different theories, but for me, I think you sort of need them. Actually, not sort of, you do need them.
Yeah, I would say it's the lesser of the two evils. So it's like, but I agree. I think there's a necessity to having it. That's like the utility that we were talking about of supports, right? Like he kind of needs that. The reason I think Lamp is by no means worse than Suzu is Suzu negates the damage. Lamp, they will come out of that Lamp with like 40 health, 50 health, whatever the percentage is right now.
And it's destroyable.
And it's destroyable. It's easily breakable. It doesn't have a lot of health. It's on a long cooldown. People come out with low health. I think it's actually probably, if I was trying to think of like a better immortality or some way to protect people from death, it's probably one of the best things that you could come up with because there's a lot of downsides, even if it does get its effectiveness.
And Emmy, you agree as well?
I agree. Yeah, I actually think BAP MO is a lot more balanced than it used to be compared to Kiriko now, obviously. But yeah. And
also, I guess it's the shifting nature of Overwatch 1 versus 2, like Overwatch 2. Like Overwatch 1 had a lot of like camp a corner. Overwatch 2 doesn't really have a lot of like just, okay, the immo around a corner is unbeatable. There's like 5 people in front of it. AVRL, is any of this changing your mind? Or are you still like, nah, I'm not a fan?
I will say that the fact that you can break MO to me is like a moot point because the duration of the MO will still be, how long does Suzu last? Suzu's so fast anyway. It's like you can break an MO, but you're not breaking MO typically faster than a Suzu would be anyway in terms of duration. I just think like.
But Suzu heals and cleanses, I think.
Cleanses, and sometimes you take like the zero damage, but then for BAP, like yes, it lasts longer, but then like they're out of it with like 50 HP.
I don't like either. I think both are not good for the game in terms of the immortality side of it. At least I think immo is more fair in the sense that like, they are going to come out low. That's because you can damage them within the immo, whereas in Suzu, you can't damage them, but they can be healed, and that's an important distinction, right? The fact that you're invulnerable, but during the vulnerability, you can still take healing, you can just like you can get pumped up in that time, which is different for MO. But immortality in I don't know, maybe it is a necessary evil for now, but it's just like it's the most anticlimactic thing in the game when you should be securing a kill and then the lamp comes out. It's like, okay, well, that's just not happening now, you know. And even if you do break the lamp in time, if depending on the situation, you know, it's players can get out alive. You know, they might be low HP. They actually might not. If you are not in a situation where your team is able to shoot the lamp, or maybe you're just a low number situation, it's just you and another player, or just you on your own, and the lamp comes out. If you spend any time shooting the lamp, the guy you're supposed to kill is now being healed back up to full. So, I mean, the lamp is basically like, how much HP does it have? It's like whatever that amount of HP is, that's just the amount of HP that just gets fundamentally added to another character's life. Obviously, that doesn't apply in like a full 5v5 situation where like, you know, you break the lamp super quickly and everyone's still low and then you just like blast them with damage. But in more, you know, low player situations, it's just like, no, you just don't get the kill. And I just think situations like that where you just get denied of a kill that probably should be yours just doesn't feel good in general. But you know, we're talking about like, how do you save a player? Maybe there's a more healthy way to like bail players out and save them without making them invulnerable.
I was gonna say, what is your idea of utility for support then? Because I think of MO as a big utility for support.
I just wonder if there's a way to do it without it being literally invulnerable.
Okay.
Like I think it's like in terms of being utility, I think like, you know, it's an interesting direction. I think it's like the intentionality of it being utility is good. The fact that it makes you invulnerable, like, is there a way?
Is there a better one in your opinion, AVRL? Is there one that you look at the game, you're like, this is a better, because you know the Winston right click was a helpful example for your other point. Is there another utility that bails people out that you're like, yeah, that one's okay? Or can you not think of one where you're like,
I mean, like anti-nade, you can bail your teammate out, right?
Well, one that's healing though, but those that's healing. So like, is there one that's not healing that is a way to save someone?
One in the game that can. One in the game right now that does that. Let me have a.
Because it'd be like Lifeweaver grip.
But the grip, I guess the grip grip's interesting. In some ways, the grip is kind of MO as well. Is there another save? There's not actually in this game. Like
pedal
maybe
platforming.
Actually, honestly, like a sleep dart is actually it won't do much for you in a 5v5 situation, but in like a small skirmish, a sleep dart will save you. A Brig getting in there with a whip shot, like actually boops do something and for you in that regard.
Because it kind of just sounds like you're just like, actually no, there's nothing that should save a player with like a utility option in that way. Like if they give a Vengeful Spirit swap, would you be okay with that in like a would you be okay if someone swapped position?
Potentially, but I actually am not super against burst healing. Like I know what I said about healing, but burst healing is different because if it's on a cooldown and it's limited, I think that's a very different type of situation, and that just becomes a resource. It's like I don't think anti-nade, the thing is region burst is like maybe the numbers is probably too high. I don't know. Region burst is would probably feel better if it wasn't like such a huge amount in the kind of AoE that it's in.
We already live in a world where it's like there's so much damage that can be thrown into someone, right? Like immortality field, like pulse bomb, graviton surges, all these kind of things. Supports don't have tools to be able to do that. Like even like Zen Transcendence isn't good enough sometimes these days to be able to save people. So it's like I think some supports should have an ability on a long cooldown, which I think is the frustration of Suzu. It's not a very long cooldown. Like Lamp is like, how much is this? Like 20 seconds? 24
seconds? Something crazy, yeah.
So it's like
15, I think.
And it has a thrown duration, and it has to pop up. Like, I think they're like, I don't know, like maybe we're just support bias because we're like, oh, it feels fun when you save someone. Like, I agree it's frustrating, but at some point, as you said, you want to give people utility that isn't too much healing. If you're not going to be able to give things like Lamp to people, then it gets really hard to come up with ideas of like how you make supports effective.
You might be right. I think like
so even the examples you gave, like Whip Shot and honestly, those are both CC abilities, which people will complain about if you give more CC abilities.
Potentially, I don't think knockback is like that egregious for now. It depends on like.
I agree.
And at least sleep dart, it's like a single target thing. But yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe KarQ's right. Maybe MO is just a necessary evil that needs to be in the game. I just look at it from like a maybe a DPS perspective, just the amount of times that I feel like I should have secured a kill and the lamp comes out. It's never once has that felt like, oh, this is a good thing in the game. Never once do I look at a situation where like a pulse bomb that I should have killed or something that takes a lot of skill. Like if you stick someone with a pulse bomb, it's like, man, that deserves to be a kill. And the lamp just comes through like, oh, great. Very cool, you know. It just feels, maybe from the perspective of the other roles, it feels really cheap. But from the perspective of support, it's like, maybe it's necessary. So
That's a fair thing to say, especially because Pulse Bomb is an ultimate and MO is a cooldown.
Pulse Bomb is also really hard to hit. Like it's extremely difficult as an
Yes.
ability. As MO is like, I'm just going to throw this on this guy. I'm just going to counter your ult. Like
I
that.
wonder-
All right.
I think, Emmy, you bring up a good point, which I think is also where a lot of the frustration lies. I think like it's not even so much like like if you're fighting a BAP, let's say I've been grinding a lot of DPS recently. So let's say I'm playing Tracer. Goodbye, Custa. Let's say I'm playing Tracer. If I'm dueling a BAP, I know he has IMO, right? So it's like, it's okay. But so if I'm dueling him normal, I got to play around that. The frustration, as AVRL said, is more when I'm like going for a pulse stick. I get the pulse stick and I'm like, oh, this is such a huge play. And then Suzu or IMO. And like the other day I was playing Mei and I'm like, okay, this fucking Blizzard's so hard to land. And then like everyone runs away. And you finally do it, teleport through a wall, Suzu. I wish like Ultimates maybe had some greater version of like being less deniable, because I get the idea of saving someone with a Suzu or a lamp when it's like a mid fight, but then denying an entire ultimate with the cooldown is where usually people are like, this is BS. Like this is
Yeah,
fucking
that's a very fair
obnoxious.
point to make.
The thing I'll say, like, to the pulse bomb one is like something that good tracers will do is they actually like play around it in the way that they know when they stick you that the lamp is going to come, and then they will literally just kill you as soon as the lamp goes down. Because so the lamp goes down, saves you, you go to 50 HP, they'll literally just insta kill you. So like there is somewhat counterplay, and I agree, like lamp can be frustrating, especially when it mitigates like big ultimates. So like, but I think, as I said, it's a necessary evil. Like the one that I don't agree with is like the Suzu problem, right? Which is like it literally just like this person's full health, it completely mitigates it. Everyone's vibing, and now you've lost cooldowns and an ultimate, right? So I agree. There's pain points there, but as I said, I think if we're gonna go to war against something, we should go to war against Suzu. So.
All right, sign me up. Any other thoughts on BAP before we move on? Anyone else got anything on that? All right, let's move on then to Brigitte. So, I mean, what a state of Overwatch where Brig is not getting complained about. I don't think she even got mentioned yet. So, other than like the whip shot in a stray mention, I think, from Emmy. So, is Brig chilling, vibing, underwhelming? KarQ, how do you feel?
I think Brig's fine. I don't think like you know, she has her very distinct weaknesses. You can't slot her in like as a generalist support, like, you know, something like a Kiri or Lucio that like literally worked in every comp archetype for a while, like is not what Brig is. She has a very clear identity, which is like to protect somebody, not brawl in the front line, because I got rid of that, thank God, from 2018. But, you know, her role is a bit more defined now, you know, paired with Ana. Ana's being played a bit more. I can't really think of any other like Brig comp that kind of works in Overwatch 2. I think in Overwatch 1 they used to run like Brig Zen, or like maybe early Overwatch 2 was Brig Zen,
Sigma.
but...
Like a super high level, they run Brig Sigma.
Oh, like, sorry, BAP Brig with Sigma. That's right. Is another something that like people can kind of cook up. But you know, her role is defined. She's a situational pick depending on, you know, what's meta, and I think she's like okay, like she's fine the way she is. Like right smack down the middle, B tier for me.
Interesting. AVRL, what was the point you were making? You kind of feel she does have a lot of plays.
I don't know. She's an interesting hero. Like I don't. I think it's interesting to have like this kind of enforcer type support in the game. That is. She just, her design is like kind of weird though in that kind of way, because she's the only support that feels like she's really quite bound to the limitations of her range. Like even like Moira, you know, the healing orbs really change it up. It's like if you removed healing orb from Moira, you'd be like, damn, this hero's got no range. I don't know. I'm like in a weird place about Brig. I think Brig has had an interesting time in Overwatch 2 where maybe the identity is not slotted in super well. Like she still seems really niche, but maybe that's fine. Maybe it's okay to be a niche hero.
I think it's okay. I think that's literally just that's her design. Like you don't want her whip shot to be like reaching across the map. You don't want that.
No,
AoE
well, the fact
aura
that
to
she
be
has a whip
reaching
shot is good. Like it gives you
Yeah,
something to do at range. Like that's important. right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Kind of leaning to what you said earlier, where you kind of, if you didn't have that, then she's only like limited by that range and only brawl and only heals like this small amount. Besides like throwing some packs out, giving that whip shot gives her allows her to do a little bit of poke at like 20-meter range or whatever the range is, kind of like a roadhog hook.
I think
Because
she might be the
space you
most.
define.
She might be the most team dependent support though, in terms of like you have to. It's if you don't play her in an organized setting, it's probably like a really weird place for her to be in. Like she feels like, I could be wrong on this, but she feels like she could be like a bad solo queue hero. The worse your team is playing together, the less value she has.
At the high ranks, yeah. I think at the low ranks, she generates enough baseline value, regardless of
Okay.
that, simply because of just like the amount of like free heals, like guaranteed heals by just like hitting something or like throwing a pack, which is why she's traditionally never even like underperformed in the lower ranks because of that baseline value.
In
And then she
Overwatch
kinda,
2?
like, probably in Overwatch 2, yeah. And it probably like dips down in the middle and then kind of goes back up in high ranks because then the higher rank players know when to situationally pick her to like extract the best value out of her.
Yeah. She's
She's
probably
like one of
fine,
those
I guess.
Yeah.
Not a particularly exciting or like hero, but she's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder if she's a case of like she's kind of stayed here and then other supports have kind of moved past, because I think the biggest frustration with Brig in Overwatch 1 was like she doesn't die, she's so immortal, and I think that does happen sometimes when she ults, but you could argue, well, that's an ultimate, fair enough. Whereas like compare Brig's unkillability to Kiriko's unkillability, and like nobody's going to be complaining about Brig if the other character does X, so it might just be another case. Or even Bap, people feel like it's just so much more survivable. Brig feels relatively killable at the moment. Custa, how do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with like what's been said. Like I think I think Brig has very limited survivability, which I think
KarQ
is
also has
the
very
big thing.
limited survivability. That's true.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say a thing. KarQ, my favorite streamer. But it's one of those things of like this hero. I think has a lot of residual hatred for what she once was, rather than what she is now.
Yep.
And I actually think she's really solid as a hero. She obviously shines when you're like, you can throw packs. Like her packs do a lot of healing. And if you cycle that well and you're playing it well, and you're like, like I play games with Mace to the Face in GM. This hero shouldn't be good, but pumps out healing, does a lot of damage, is able to mitigate a lot of things. She has her times in which she shines in dive. And I think she just needs to like stay where she's at. The only people who are still on a crusade against Brig are like Wrecking Ball players, Winston players, Doomfist players, the people who are like directly affected by how strong like that Brig counters their hero. But as much as there shouldn't be hard counters, I don't think Brig is a hard counter as much anymore, because Brig just fucking dies. If a Winston lands on you and they hit the whip and a Tracer comes in your back, like you just die. Like there's a lot of threats to you as a Brig. And I actually think the underrated part of Brig is Brig's a hard hero to play these days. Like people act like it's just the old thing where you just like throw a thing. Managing packs is important. Getting maximum Inspire uptime, not fucking dying, using your cooldowns effectively.
There's a lot of finesse to her right now. Yeah.
I suck at Brig. Like easily my worst hero. And every time I try and play it, like in any like high rank game, I just get absolutely farmed. So I think
remember our Overwatch. We're like,
we play that
playing Brig.
I'm like,
I just
bro,
don't want to do
I'm
it,
not
man.
playing Brig, guys. I think it might be good here, but I'm not going to do it because I suck ass at this hero. And like, I think it's an underrated. Maybe that's not true for all ranks, and maybe just like a high rank thing. But Brig is actually very difficult to master these days.
I agree. Yeah. I think she's actually always been kind of a hard hero. It's funny because it's funny the dichotomy in Overwatch 1 especially, where like I feel like a lot of complaints on forums and stuff were like, oh man, this hero is useless. And then you would hear like Sam or like other people like, man, this hero, she's unbelievably broken. It's like when you know how to play her, she's like fine, but she is skill ceiling dependent because of the range limitation. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with
How do
that.
you feel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Brig's pretty she, like what everybody else said, I think she just has her place and she's more comp dependent, probably the most comp dependent. And I agree with Custa that she just dies very easily and she takes a lot more skill than she used to take. And if you miss your cooldowns, you are most likely dead.
Right. I think that, I think KarQ made a good point about like it in like the metal ranks, like maybe gold, just hitting something is maybe a lot of free value. But I think beyond that tier, there's very little free value to be gotten, right? Like there's not like the hero just doesn't just start doing a bunch of things just by pushing the button. Like the one pack, if that's all you're doing, it's not gonna get you
I
many
find in
places.
Diamond, most people don't know how to play her, and they get extremely punished for it. They just see like, oh, when I have Ana, I should play Brig, and then they don't play her properly with the Ana, and they're just feeding the entire game. I get that all the time.
Yeah, I see a lot of turbo feeding Brigs. This is true. I see a lot of them bash into like Ramatras and wonder why they die, and then they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
I still feel, by the way, I still feel like I see a lot of Brigs try to bash to stun outside of ult, and I
Yes.
cannot believe that people have not clocked on. Like, I see this all the time, whether I'm on the receiving end or watching my Brig try to stun like a high noon or something,
Yeah.
and I'm like, bro, that ain't it. You don't want to do that.
They don't use it for a movement ability. It's so mind-boggling to me. I'm like, you haven't touched this hero since Overwatch 1, very clearly,
Yeah.
if at
It
all.
does proc. It does trigger inspire, but you know.
Yeah, but not enough that
Yeah.
you're gonna live. You're most likely dead.
Yeah. If they're
Well,
doing
the
it
ins-
just all in, then it just dies. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Inspire may live after you, but you won't live, so...
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing is watching like even rallied Briggs bash it and just get melted. It's like you're still not as tanky as you think you are
Yeah,
sometimes.
you still have to
yes.
use the bash strategically.
Yes, I think...
Rally
yeah.
used to be they press the button, run the fuck away, and the number of times was like, no, just kill them. Like they're not that invulnerable, especially after they've hit the bash.
Right. I agree. I think that's like probably just because there's not that much conversation around Brig anymore. I think people have not necessarily evolved the Brig playstyles as like the characters evolved in Overwatch 2. Okay, let's talk about Illari then. So you guys, again, sort of alluded to her where she's been getting a lot stronger, or at least the win rate from the developers have said that she's doing a lot better. They have progressively buffed her over a series of patches to the point where I feel like her healing is actually really high. How do you feel about her right now? I'll go to Custa first.
I think she fits better in how a support should play the game. I think where she once was I don't really know how she's played at lower ranks, but at high ranks is literally you're just like a flanking support who throws a pylon, and you're just like an added flanking threat. And it became very difficult to push Illari. The biggest weakness of Illari is that her pylon dies and she loses a lot of healing and self-survivability. So I actually like the idea that they're giving the pylon more effectiveness to help your team, because that's moving her away from this like solo gameplay that isn't really, team play like Overwatch should be. But I think in high ranks, she runs into the issue of like once her pylon dies, she just like isn't really anything meaningful. But I think there's a lot of skill and a lot of places Illari can be played right now. I think she has a pretty high win rate. If you can, like, I think on control and escort, not control and escort and hybrid, she's really good. Like certain maps, like I think she's really good on Hollywood. Anywhere where you can set up an effective pylon and defend that space, she's really good. And I think I like the direction for her. I think one of the biggest things is her ult feels just like really weird to use. I think is the weirdest thing about her kit, because it's like it's an offensive ultimate, but it's people use it for mobility more than anything these days at higher ranks, and then they just like shoot it at one person and then try and pop them. But it's like mitigated by so many different things. So it maybe Kiriko just exists and that makes her ultimate worse. So I don't know. I think Illari's in a much better spot than she's ever been, and that's good.
Emmy, how about you? How do you feel about Illari? KarQ's nodding as well.
I think she's pretty strong right now. I've been seeing her a lot more frequently in games, and especially on payload and escort maps. Junkertown is the first one that came to mind. I always see Illari on Junkertown. And I do agree with her ultimate. When they first nerfed her ultimate, I was like, why? Like with the shield thing? Because it used to go
Right.
through shields. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, you still have to pop it to make them explode. So like I didn't understand why they changed that. But I do think if they buff her ultimate, they'll probably have to tune her again, because she kind of dominates with the DPS.
They don't need to buff the ult. I think it's good. Zones
You
as
think?
well. It helps
like
you
it's so hard
reposition.
to
It
get
zones
off.
people. It still zones them and it slows them. It kind of like it's a glorified Hanzo ult. If it hits, it kills, but if not, it like forces bad positioning. Like
Yeah,
the
I
slow is
fe-
pretty significant. They're just like, oh
Yeah,
shit,
dude.
I'm tagged by it, and they're like, oh.
I just feel like it's also a die button for her, because like, I mean, I guess unless you're taking cover the entire time, but most of the time they go up and she's a really easy target to hit in the sky.
You can kind of like buy time too. At least that's how I found to be using it. It's kind of like, you know, when Junkrat just like has the tire, it's like a zoning tool. Everyone just kind of scrambles for a bit and you can just hold the tire for a while and just buy some time. Sometimes with Illari, I'll pop the button and I'll actually just chill for a bit and everyone just starts panicking. If they happen to have Ryan, he stops swinging because he has to hold the shield up. It can buy time or buy space and time for your team in a lot of cases. Just other use cases besides actually just confirming a kill. I think the ult's actually in a pretty good spot. I don't think they need to buff it by any means or do anything to it. Sorry for cutting you off. You can keep going. I have things to
You
say
didn't
about
cut me
Illari.
off. You're good.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I have a couple of theories and reasons why I think Illari is really good. Number one, I think it all stemmed from, you know, slow incremental buffs, right? I think in February, that's when they like, this is like when Illari was like bad, like preseason 9, like D tier or whatever. They buffed the pylon to be like super short cooldown. They made the Sunstruck stuff do a lot more damage. It's like, okay, in a better spot, but not really played yet. And then like they buffed her again in March, where it's like the primary fire recovery time got a little better. And then like the charge time as well. And then they ended up like nerfing it again, but then they gave more power to like the healing. It's like, okay, her identity is still kind of like, she's always been like okay since then. And then this season 11, they buffed her again, especially with the damage from outburst. That's pretty marginal. The healing pylon being changed, where it's like half healing on Illari, but like a lot more for your teammates, and the pylon is tankier, really solidified her identity. Kind of what Custa said, not to be like a solo off angler, but to kind of play with your team and make use of that like healing beam now, and actually just playing to mark the other tank. At least that's how I see it, because I think Illari has a pretty big advantage against tanks as well now, because of also mid-season 10. That's something I forgot to mention. So mid-season 10, 25% headshot damage reduction for tanks does not apply for Illari. She ignores that, by the way.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Because she had a 1.5x headshot multiplier.
Anyways.
Yeah, it was already lower, 1.5x. So the fact that it doesn't affect her is an indirect buff to like, you know, incentivize you to shoot tanks' heads, which aren't very hard to hit if you're like, you know, a high ranked player, good hit scan.
It's surprisingly easy to hit her shots.
Yeah, and her shots are easy to hit. And then number two, the armor change also benefited that shot to the head, because armor, I think Illari's shot is like how much to the head? Like 112.5? It's like 75 to the body times 1.5 is 112.5. If it was previous armor would reduce it by 30% to like 79. And then now after the armor change, it's like 107.5 because it's like a flat -5. So no headshot damage reduction. Armor benefits her. A lot of tanks have armor. So an incentive, it gave Illari the identity to kind of just play with your tank, pocket with the extra buffed beam healing. So your tank wins that tank matchup and you keep pumping damage onto their tank, make them lose. And then, you know, you can, you know, take her off angles after for cleanup or whatever with the pylon. And I think that's kind of where I found success. Like maybe I'll like, you know, slide to the right door for a little bit. Like let's say I'm attacking Hollywood, maybe the slight off angle if I go into the server room for a bit with my pylon. But if I don't find anything with a bit of chip, I'll like back up and then sort of play with my tank with my pylon, making sure they're super healthy, pressure the other tank, win off that. But yeah, that's how I see Illari, and I think it's you know, the stats back it up. Aaron Keller said 55% win rate, which is like one of the biggest winners for support this patch for all those reasons since mid-season 10.
Yeah, I've noticed that her raw DPS is really, really oppressive a lot of times.
I got the numbers to back it up. So
I have concerns that this hero is good. She's one of these heroes that is good if her numbers is good, which means that like maybe the kit is actually kind of flawed in some way. It's one of these heroes like, well, I got to play this hero now because like, well, the numbers are just so good, you know. So yeah, that could be problematic. I think it's a weird place for supports in terms of the balance between healing output and damage output. She was clearly designed as a hero that is meant to appeal a bit more to DPS players, sort of be a pseudo DPS as a support. And again, the fact that she's needed her healing to be buffed up over time probably exposes the fact that, you know, once more, healing is the definitive value that you define how good a support is. So if your healing isn't up to scratch, she's not a very good, effective support hero. So yeah, I don't know. Damage is like, her being a precision hero is a bit strange. I know being a precision damage dealer is probably like the most rewarding, arguably rewarding way to deal damage, but I just think it's out of place for support to be like a precision damage dealer. I much like prefer the damage to be more in line with what Anna's doing, what Bap's doing in terms of damage output, where it's like not all about sinking a direct headshot, even though it's kind of weird that Kiriko is that way as well, which, potentially weird design, which probably had to reduce the 3x headshot on Kiriko for similar reasons, because it was just like, is this really the identity hero? It's just like these precision headshots. So I think the damage needs to be looked at in terms of like how powerful that ends up becoming. But again, I just think this hero might just become a symptom of numbers really good equals play rate goes up.
I will say as well, I think Illari falls very similar in line with Zenyatta, with just like they're kind of like a greedy pick of like, if you can get away with it, it's very oppressive to play against, right? But if you run down an Illari, she does kind of just die, right? Like if you run her down and her pylon's dead, she's just gonna fall over. So like I think it's fine for heroes like that to exist in the game, but I agree that like Illari is one of those heroes that like, talk to me again in like 3 months and maybe I will have a very vile take about Illari and how I just hate this hero and how I don't want to shoot people anymore and I fucking hate pylons. So like, it's one of the, I consider Illari to be in similar spot of where Farah is right now, where it's like, okay, cool to see this new hero sort of like doing well in play rates, but if it lasts too long and it gets too oppressive, then I think they're going to need to pull her in line. And I agree with AVRL in the sense that it's like, the hero's identity could potentially be in a very weird spot of like, what do you change or nerf about her if she does become oppressive? Because it's good that she's more team orientated, but then if you take away her damage, then what is she really doing? Like, what is she here for?
Custa asking the deep philosophical questions, like, what the fuck are we here for?
Well,
She's meant to be like a funky, like almost defensive, like not stalling, like a turtling type of hero. Like, I don't know. I don't want to compare her to Torb. I don't want to pigeonhole these heroes too much, but like, where does she really shine? She shines in maps where like super angle, you can hide the pylon in places that are hard to break, and just abuse the fact that like you win every single damage trade because pylon just out heals any damage in a poke situation. Maybe that's where she's supposed to be, but I just think like that style of play, that style of like Overwatch is not particularly fun.
I wonder how much of that is in the consideration before they release a hero, like whether they are like, we want to release this kind of hero, or whether just like we've designed this kind of hero and I guess we're throwing it out there. Like I genuinely don't know. I don't know if they're like, yeah, we do need, it's time we release like a pokey support that's gonna sit there, or whether just like, oh, this is a neat idea, let's fucking run it. We'll find out. Any other thoughts on Illari, or should we move on to the big one? Any other?
I just don't know if you can make this hero good without like buffing her numbers up, which then just turns into a numbers hero. So yeah.
No, I think it's a good flag to point and raise and say, will we be able to make this hero work without just overstated, basically an overstated version of this hero? Okay, well, let's move on to Kiriko then. Probably already has been discussed the most, and is generally probably discussed the most amongst online discussions. Where do we land? Is it still oppressive Kiriko land, or is it you guys saying, well, we're starting to emerge out of that forest? So I'll go to Emiliath first. Emmy, how do you feel about Kiriko?
I mean, it does feel better. It does feel better. I feel like I can play Ana more often than I used to be able to, but I still think she's a high pick for me. But yeah, I mean, I play on a team, and when we scrim, we still play Lucio, Kiri. But we haven't scrimmed in a while, so that could have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like she does a lot of things really well, and I can backline and I can kill the enemy DPS or the Widow that's holding the lobby hostage. So I prefer her over Ana in a lot of situations still.
And you're you sound a little bit, you're not super keen on her strength.
No, I mean, I like Kiriko. I like playing her. But I prefer playing her when I want to play her and not because I have to, which was the same with Bap. I actually really enjoy Bap now, but I hated him before because it was Bap jail. I had to play Bap. I think she's a very fun character. I just don't want to be forced to play her.
That's fair. I think that's a fair statement for pretty much most heroes, I would say. Like, feeling like you have to pick a hero is always the worst feeling in Overwatch, I would say. KarQ, the Kiriko.
I mean, nothing that we didn't say before. We had a whole section earlier where we kind of discussed what Kiriko does and can do. So nothing more to add to that. She can just do a bit of everything. For me, in her actual current season 11 state, it's not like she's weak like by kit because they just took 1 second off Swift Step. Okay, but it's more of how the other stuff is kind of like complemented the flyer Pharah meta a bit more, where Kiriko's role isn't as dominant, and Kiriko can't really contest the Pharah as well as someone like Illari or Bap or Ana. So it just kind of depends on what comp you're playing more than anything. So maybe I'd probably give her still an A, B plus A, instead of like hard S meta because of other reasons, you know?
That's fair. Custa, how about you?
Yeah, like as I said, like I think maybe I had a hotter take when I said it. Like, I like that they've been incrementally making her worse. Like, and just like they're not just coming through with a thing. Like, I think they're not going to change Suzu. If they were going to change Suzu, they would have done it already. So I think that's probably here to stay. As I said earlier, there could be some nerfing to the healing of it. Like, I think it needs to cleanse and immune. I think if it doesn't do that, then what really is it? If you're going to remove that, I think you just need to change it. So I think you just need to hurt it in other ways. Reduce the effectiveness of Swift Step, I think hurts it at the high ranks. The thing for me that makes Kiriko so strong is I'm like, we're playing dive. Guess I'll go Kiriko. My tank's dying. Guess I'll go Kiriko. I'm dying. Guess I'll go Kiriko. My other support's dying. Guess I'll go Kiriko. Like, pretty much any time anything's not working, the first thing I look at is I'm just going to go Kiriko because they kind of do everything very well. There are other heroes that do things better, but overall, it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all hero into any support composition. No one ever picks Kiriko, and I'm like, don't play Kiriko. That doesn't make sense. So I think that's really the frustration that I have for Kiriko, and the fact that we've been doing it for so long can get annoying. I agree with Emmy. Hero's fun as hell. Like, I really enjoy playing this hero, but it's been too much, and I think I'd love to see other heroes shine over Kiriko.
AVRL, how do you view this?
Yeah. I think her being like a good hero but not like a must pick is probably where she needs to be. I don't know if she'll ever be out of meta, like to the point where if you don't pick her, it's probably because like if she's out of meta, then she's probably been dumpstered. And I don't think that's the right way to go. I don't think this hero needs to be dumpstered. But it is hard to like, what are you supposed to do about that? There's some easy stuff you can do about a kit, like TPing out of spawn should not be a thing. That should be on a cooldown off rip. But Suzu, I think they can still change Suzu. Just because they haven't yet doesn't mean they won't. I just think it's one of those difficult things. It's like, okay, well, they just need more time to figure it out. Like they've shown in the past that like anything's changeable once they've like really sat on it for long enough. Sometimes you just need them to sit on it a little bit longer. But you could also be right, Scott. Maybe they just don't want to change it at this rate because it is hard. Like if you get rid of either the MO or the cleanse, you have to really start considering what this ability does. Then you might have to increase the healing on it. And there's more burst healing than is it just a range regen burst. The part of the Suzu we discussed Suzu to death, but like one extra part of it that I just think is unfun is the straight hard countering of Ana. Like as I've said, I think Ana being a meta is good. Ana's a good hero, but like the fact that you can just remove a sleep dart just with something that's way easier to hit than a sleep dart, I think is not particularly good. But they're actually you see the dev patch notes, they're kind of moving in a more positive direction where at least you can't just Suzu a shatter anymore. You can't just like straight up deny a Ryan shatter or like a big ultimate like that. I think that's the correct decision, the correct direction the game needs to go.
Yeah, I think they should apply that to more ultimates and different heroes.
I think most ultimates shouldn't be like so easily countered. I think you want to have some counters, but to like just have something that takes, in some cases, way less skill to use just to simply counter an ultimate. I just think feels weird.
I remember
like
in Overwatch 1, it felt really good countering ults with other ults. And I think that's a big thing that people probably miss.
Yeah,
I think Unstoppable needs to come onto certain abilities because then I think that like ultimates primarily, because I think that opens the door for them to add more things like this. But like playing a Sigma against a Sombra is just like hell. The Sombra's just waiting there like, try it, bro. I fucking dare you. Like, and it's not even like difficult to do, right? So it's like, I feel the same way about like Junker Queen's ult. The fact that she can just kind of be like knocked out of that doesn't really make sense. Even within the power fantasy of she's literally flying a weapon a million miles an hour, and I'm just gonna like, I don't know, give her a whip. Like, I don't know, it doesn't really
Hit
make
her with the
sense to me.
sound of music.
Yeah, hit her with music, and then she fucking goes to the side and runs into a wall for 3 seconds. So yeah, I don't know.
I think ults still need to be like counterable in some cases. I don't know if more things need unstoppable, but it's like I think hack versus Sigma is like egregiously bad. But for example, I think Sigma's rocking each other out of ult is like super good for the game.
I
Like,
agree.
that's part of the matchup, so you can't get rid of that. But then how do you address hack? I think maybe it's just a case where like, okay, well you can't hack people out of ultimates. That maybe is like a positive thing. But I think Sombra's like already a pretty not a great hero, but it's just certain interactions are not healthy. Stuff like does flashbang still counter the queen ult? Does, right? Like,
Yes.
even
I think it does,
flashbang?
but it's a lot
It
harder because
does.
you need to be
The
in
range
melee.
is limited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there used to be. Well, that's better because it used to be like the magnate. You could just like instantly hint. It's like she's ulting, you magnate it. Oh, she just stops ulting. Cool. It's like, what? That doesn't make it. It's just crazy. Stuff like that is really lame. I think like it's being able to sleep dart a rampage is really cool, but then like the old magnate versus it was just not. So certain interactions feel really bad, and other interactions feel fine as far as countering ults goes.
Yeah, I think those are really salient points. I think they do illustrate again the frustration with Kiriko as we started, and I do agree with AVRL. I think they've shown resistance to changing Suzu, great resistance, right? But I think that it could. I do genuinely, one thing that I will always give this dev team credit for is I think they would make any change that they thought was better for the game. Like I remember in Overwatch 1 there was a lot of like the resistance was like permanent. It was like, we are not changing this. Like, you guys can cry until the cows come home. We are not going to change this thing. Whereas this dev team, I think they are resistant. Clearly, we've yelled about Suzu for ages. The first thing that we got was like, oh, it doesn't boop anymore. If anyone even remembers that, it's like, it doesn't boop anymore. And that was like a rejoice. It doesn't at least boop you now while you're getting intangible.
Boop was so fun too.
It was so fucking stupid, bro.
Yeah.
It was so fucking. I still will mold every time. There's that clip of me on Junker or Li Zhang Junker Queen ulting, getting booped off the bridge because I was like ulting down the bridge and I got booped off the bridge and I was just like lost my mind. So they removed the
I figured it
boop.
out.
Sorry, just finish this point, Avril, then I'll let you go. Like, they removed the boop. They have nerfed progressive elements of it. Like, they made the intangibility shorter. They could easily take one aspect of it away, right? It's like I think the intangibility clearly is the biggest pain point. Like, it has to cleanse. I think that much is like key to its identity. I think it has to cleanse. Does it have to heal? Probably not. Like, you could just give it intangibility and cleanse, and maybe that'd be less frustrating. But clearly, the intangibility is the most frustrating part. Could you just make it invulnerability instead of intangibility? Like, you cleanse and you can't die, but you can still be hit. There's things they could do.
I think what the biggest problem, sorry, I'll give it to you after this, Avril, is that like if you make it so it's not intangible and only cleanse, that's like such a niche thing. It would become more of like a heal more than anything, and then I think you would have to like buff the heal maybe, but
Yes.
like yeah, that kind of becomes it. So it's like I think there's definitely directions they could go, but as I said, I think personally, I don't even think the Suzu, like, it's obviously very frustrating, but I would rather them look in other directions on Kiriko before they really take away, honestly, one of the big parts of why a lot of people play Kiriko, which is the Suzu.
Right. I mean, it is, which is good, both good and bad. But yeah, go ahead, Avril.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think I figured out, like, in terms of the devs' willingness to change stuff or not is maybe based on, like, how much would it fundamentally change the identity of the hero? And Widowmaker is probably the best example of this. I actually wish I was on the DPS discussion.
You were
because I
supposed
would
to
have had
be.
something to say about- I know, but I had a conflict. I don't this time, but I had a conflict last time, unfortunately. But I'm here now, and it's the thing with like, well, they wanted to remove a one shot, so why does Widowmaker still one shot? It's like, well, because that's part of her identity. She literally just be a bad Ashe. She'd like be Ashe from Walmart, like, you know, Ashe at home if she didn't have the one shot. Like, that's literally the situation. So, you know, so I do think abilities like Suzu and just other things that where they seem resistant to change, it's probably because if you did change it, it would really fundamentally change the identity of the hero in some way. Or like it's just a very hard thing to change that still feels good because, you know, Custa's right. Like, if you removed either one of the invulnerability or the cleanse, it's like, what are we actually looking at now? What is this ability? So it does feel difficult. Like, I don't really know what you're supposed to do about this. I would like certain interactions to change. Like I don't think it should remove sleep dart, but then you have inconsistency in the interaction, then it becomes a confusing here. It's like, well, why does it cleanse this but not that? You know what I mean? It just gets like a strange situation. So, yeah, it's a tough one. I can see why Blizzard haven't jumped the gun on it because it's clearly like complex.
Yeah, and I think it is good to wait before reacting to things sometimes. Like, I think Custa alluded to with Farah, like, as much as I find Farah frustrating, it's like, I can understand the devs being like, let's wait a bit, you know, let's see, maybe people will learn to adapt to it. That was one of the things with goats that the devs originally, they were like, well, you know, maybe you guys haven't explored all the options of how to counter goats. I mean, maybe 3 years down the line, people were starting to find some answers, but it was a bit, we kind of held on too long there. So I'm definitely all for waiting and sitting, but I also think that, like, we've waited in SAP for 2 years now, and I think that, like, they shouldn't be too afraid either, especially with new heroes, to kind of rethink certain things, because I can understand being like, I don't know if we can take I don't know if we can take damage boost away from Mercy because we've had it for 7 years now. Like, I don't know if we can do that, even though they have actually taken away some pretty core things to some OG heroes. But you can't really make that argument with, like, a Kiriko or, you know, the Sojourn Rail was a problem for so long. You can't make these arguments with heroes that you released like 5 months ago and say, like, oh, but people love this. They're just out. Nobody's a fucking Sojourn one trick 1 month into the release of the hero. Like, you have time to be like, we kind of misjudged this one. Like, it was a fun idea, but we're going to scale it back. We're going to take this part out. Like, I don't really buy the argument that, like, oh, well, what about the Kiriko fancy? Like, you made her 2 years ago and you ummed and ahed for 2 years. Now if people 2 years later are like, well, I've played Kiriko for the Suzu, it's because you waited 2 years before you changed it. And you had the time, all this time, to do something. So
it's also strange how you're good.
Yeah.
It's also strange how, like, slow they've been to nerf Kiri, but, like, with other characters, they're very quick and they're very hard on those characters, especially with old Overwatch heroes. So it doesn't really make sense to say that they're trying to keep the integrity of Kiriko.
right.
I will say, like, something that, like, we have heard in the past is that potentially Kiriko's win rate isn't as oppressive as we like to think it is. Kiriko might be stronger, but, like, I don't really love that argument. Like, if that is the reasoning, like, I don't love that argument because, like, just in play rates, I think is a problem. Like, just how much Kiriko has been played over the years. So, like, I don't know. I agree. Like, Kiriko definitely feels like a miss. I hope it's not the thing of, like, Kiriko's marketable and, like, people like Kiriko. I hope that's not the reason, especially when it comes down to, like, the Suzu, right? Like, I don't think anyone's like, I love Kiriko because the Suzu really gets me going on, like, what I love about a hero. It's like, no one, like, everyone just likes Suzu because it's strong, but I think the core identity of Kiriko isn't the Suzu, and it should be adjustable if they can. But as I said, I think they've been stubborn on it. I don't see them coming for it in any time soon. They've tried everything else under the sun to bring it down, and she's finally at a somewhat respectable level. But even then, I think I still want to see Alec come through with a steel chair at some point.
I actually think her identity is in her TP too. Like, they even
Yeah.
said in the beginning, oh, this is never seen before. She can TP through walls. It's so frustrating not being able to get to your
Because
teammates.
in the trailer too.
Yeah, and they marketed the hell out of that. So it's weird. I don't know. The Suzu thing is just, it's always been weird to me.
And I hate the play rate argument or the win rate argument. Like,
I agree.
I feel like
that tilts me.
I feel like the win rate is the secondary statistic you should use, or the, you know, even the pick rate, win rate. I feel like they're the secondary statistic. The primary thing is, like, what the community is telling you. And I'm sure the devs will say, we pay attention to that. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. But it's like, whenever the counter arguments come, it's always like, well, her win rate is bad. But if the community is yelling at you that, like, this, we fucking hate this is fucking awful, and you're like, well, yeah, the win rate's fine though, guys. Like, well, no, but I don't care if she's winning or losing. I care how she affects the game I'm in. And the game I'm in feels worse. Go ahead,
It's not even that her win rate is bad. It's that it's bad in lower ranks, which
I think
honestly is probably
yeah.
okay and healthy in a lot of characters, especially a character like Kiriko.
Right,
Yeah.
which we kind of said at the start, like, well, we wouldn't apply that to Tracer. We'd be like, well, let's fucking buff Tracer, man.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's winning in silver with Tracer. Like, it's okay. It's okay with me. Like, it's okay if Widowmaker isn't dominating silver. Although, you know, with silver, you come the silver movement as well as the silver aim. But still, like, I'm okay if Widowmakers aren't holding lobbies hostage in silver, because I expect that you need to do this before you start being good on Widowmaker, right? So, I mean, yeah. Anyways, I won't rant for any longer. Anything else you guys want to say before we move on to Lifeweaver? Kiriko gets me riled up. Kiriko's my button point where I'm like, people start talking about Kiriko. I'm like, wait. First in line with the fucking pitchfork.
I think she's a lot of people's button point.
Any other thoughts before we move on? Are we good? Okay, well, let's move on then to another new Overwatch 2 hero, a Lifeweaver. So, I feel like I haven't heard a lot about Lifeweaver recently, and I don't necessarily see a lot of Lifeweaver recently either. Kind of hard to gauge how people are feeling about him. I'm going to you AVRL first. How do you feel about Lifeweaver?
I just don't know what you're supposed to do with this hero. Like, I think it was really interesting what they tried to do with the design and the utility. Like, it's clearly like some of the most unique utility in the game. Like, we hadn't had anything like Lifeweaver. We haven't had anything like the pedal platform before in the game. I mean, I'm fundamentally against like heal botting supports. Like, I've made that pretty clear. But yeah, I know this is definitely one of those heroes that is, if Lifeweaver is picked, it's because the stats are getting buffed. Like, let's be clear. That's certainly how it's been in the past. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be extreme enough to say like, oh, you just need to fundamentally redesign this hero. I don't want to say that, but man, I really don't know what you're supposed to do here.
Custa, do you know what we're supposed to do here?
Yeah, I think they have a really big problem in the sense of like, first of all, it's a niche hero, but I don't think it's popular as well. Like, people just like, not a lot of people play it except for Rack Attack. Like, that's the only person I know who's like, and there's that one other player who like really high at GM. I know some people do enjoy the hero, but I agree with AVRL that it's like, the idea of the kit is like, it is pure healing, but that makes it really unfun to play with and against because it doesn't feel like they offer anything outside of that. The pedal platform was a cool idea in theory, but it doesn't play out that way. It's very rarely used for any meaningful way, and it's more just used as like a defensive for the Lifeweaver. And then the grip, I will say I really liked the idea of grip when it was first introduced. It feels really clunky, is the thing that I was the most disappointed about with Lifeweaver, is like it just feels really bad to pull people. I think there's a lot of like buggy things. Like, I don't know, I think everyone's grabbed someone who got pulse bomb before and then it pulls and kills someone else on the way through, right? And it's just not fast, it's not responsive. So it just didn't really like, I wanted Thresh Lantern for like the world's longest time, right? Anyone who knows League of Legends, it's essentially an interactable thing that does the exact same thing, but it doesn't play that way. And his DPS is just like clunky as well. It feels terrible to like switch between the two heals and the damage. So I actually really like the changes that SK made, like some of the changes that she made there. And I think there's something there like double pedals, like it goes higher. Just like, I don't know, you can mess with it, but I think at the root, the hero is not fun. So I think, and I don't think great for the game. So I think this is one of the heroes that goes on the rework list, but I think they're just giving it a little bit of time first.
I mean, hard to say you're going to rework a hero you released,
Exactly. And that's why I think it's kind of like, it's fine for now, but they'll fix it.
KarQ, do you think it's that bad? Do you think we need to rework, or are you more light on Lifeweaver?
I think like by raw power and where he stands in season 11, I think he's kind of like low B tier. I actually think he's okay because he does that one thing very well. And since Illari is like super good right now, you can kind of like complement his weakness, which is the weapon swap and dealing damage. I think like Rack and Cal did the Illari Lifeweaver stuff in OWCS last month too. That being said, I do think there's a couple of ways that I would probably change him to make him a bit more engaging and fun. Number one, I think platform, like you said, or pedal platform doesn't work out the way it is because like I feel like people just accidentally step on it and it just goes up and you have no control of how high it goes. So I think you have that like height range, but I think Lifeweaver should have the ability to choose when to activate it and choose how high it goes up to its cap.
I like that.
So like if I really want to just go on it, I have to quickly be proactive, quickly press it, go up to the height I want, press stop, and then work off that. That's number one. Number two, if you want the weapon to be a bit more fluid with the heals, I was always saying you could probably like bank charge a heal when you swap weapons. So like if I full charge and like nothing's happening and I want to swap weapons, it just feels clunky to just swap out. And I feel like you could probably hold it to kind of incentivize you to like deal more thorn damage, but then obviously you have to nerf the heal numbers to compensate, right? I'm not saying you just do all this without touching other stuff. So maybe like max heal of 60, but like instead of, it's 80 right now, by the way. Instead of 80, you can probably like hold maybe 60, or like it would be decaying if you swap to your weapon very slowly. And then to kind of like encourage it, probably cut the weapon swap timing too, to make that a little bit more fluid. What else could they do to him?
What do you think
those
about
two are-
allowing you to pedal platform like horizontally? Or is that too
What do you mean?
weird?
Oh, like
Push
a magic
people?
carpet, like
Push
Aladdin.
people. No, you can push people. Like
Like
put
you
it
can
on a
throw
wall.
it on
and
a
you push them.
wall and then
Yeah, yeah.
activate it. So when they're walking in, you push people in a certain direction.
Just like trash
Is that-
compactor,
is that
just like
too
slowly.
weird?
Wow.
Like that.
I mean,
Like that. What is it called? Orcs versus humans tower thing. You put it on the wall and just push somebody. I don't know if you guys know the one I'm
I
talking
don't know.
about.
I don't know. That would
Oh,
feel
wait,
very
which
annoying
one?
to play into.
I think I would think people
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
pissed off. Yeah.
yeah,
Probably.
that
It's just a
seems-
fun
okay,
idea.
yeah.
It's just like
Yeah,
it's a
Yeah, I
fun
mean
idea.
that's the shit you throw on like April Fools or one of those
Yeah.
like creator patches and just see how it works. But anyways, those are my suggestions for Lifeweaver. But like by Rob's power right now, like he does what he does pretty effectively. Probably a little B tier. He's like in a spot where like he can, you know, definitely generate value for the team, but can't like play make enough to kind of like bring him like super high above 50% win rate. So he can't like close out games on his own, but he's enough to kind of like maintain his spot and like do what he needs to do. So
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. Emmy, how do you feel about Lifeweaver?
I don't think he's in a good spot. I think he's the bottom 3 supports right now. I think the biggest flaw with his design is that he was created purely defensively, basically, outside of his thorns, I guess. So I think that's why every other support outshines him, is because they all have a way to play aggressively, whereas he has a very hard time doing that. You can use pedal platform to play aggressively, but there's a high chance you die. I also really liked his parting gift when he was first released, and I wish they would have played with that more truthfully.
just make it
I
so
think
the
that-
enemies can't pick it up or something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was a really interesting mechanic. Like even if it like poisoned them or something, if they picked it up, I don't know.
Ooh.
Well, I like that.
Emmy's creator
Thought
patch
that was
cooking.
cool.
Like it becomes a trap on the ground for the enemy team.
I think Lifeweaver with poison damage would be really interesting. But obviously I don't know how you balance that with other things.
What if you
I don't
change-
think-
That's
I don't think-
my-
I don't
I've
think it
always
would-
thought-
it wouldn't have been like a big game. Kind of like how Junkrat's like, you know, parting gift is kind of like
Yeah,
just
I
there.
don't
It's
think
just
it would have been a
there.
big deal. I was surprised that they just like
Just-
took it out so quickly.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
It
Yeah,
could
that
kind
was-
of
that
just be fun
seems
to keep in.
aggressive.
Yeah, they did that to like that to the fucking parting gift, and then like Suzu did that 2 years.
Yeah,
back.
he's going back to
that's
Suzu.
what I-
He's
that's
gone
what I
back.
don't
I
get.
got back. But I'm just this isn't even about Suzu. This is about the thing. Like, how are you gonna take this like really inconsequential thing and be like, no fucking delete button
Yeah.
right now? Like that was like a really
Yeah.
quick turnaround to be like, fuck this shit.
Yeah, that was like his first patch, I think, wasn't it? It's
Yeah, it
very
was really-
odd.
It was really odd. I think it must have been clearly something that they were already on the fringe about, right? They were already like,
Yeah.
we don't really like this. And then the minute they came out, they were like, fuck this shit. Some dev was like, I told you guys this was ass. Take it out now. And they're like, all right, fine, we're gonna take it out. So I don't know what happened with that. I will say on Lifeweaver, I think a hero like this needs a skill shot somewhere. I'm all for the heal botting to be a thing you can do. Like I'm not one of those elitists who views aim as the only metric of someone's skill in Overwatch. Like there's so many other factors that I don't need everyone to be Ana. Like, okay, go, you want to be Lifeweaver. You don't want to be aggressive? That's okay. I don't mind someone who's like, I don't like an aggressive support. I don't want to shoot the enemy team. I just want to help my team. I'm okay with that. But then there needs to be some skill shot somewhere. And the thing that came to my mind, again, I'm Dota pilled, so I'm always thinking about Dota. It's like a really fun support in Dota called Hoodwink. And she has a lot of skill shots, but like her ultimate is this like, it's called Sharpshooter. And it's like this, she's like all about bow and arrows. And she'll charge this little beam and you see this beam just go across the map. And she winds it up and you hear the wind up noise. And it's like a really long range. And then like once she like the longer she charges, the more damage it does. And then she shoots it out as a projectile. And like if it hits, it, you know, does a lot of damage. And it also hits like hits them with like a status effect called break. And it's like really fun because it's like, you know, you can charge it for long and really try and go for the shot. You can try to finish someone off with it. You can use it on entry to slow them a little bit. And you can even use it to escape because it knocks you back a little bit because like, it's like the shot that hits. So it's like, there's room to play with it. It's really fun. and it adds like a different element. I think like Lifeweaver needs something like we don't even have a lot of those kind of abilities in Overwatch that you kind of like charge and really aim deliberately, right? Like everything is like thrown out all instantly. I wouldn't mind him because he's like a circumspect hero, right? He's like a hero who kind of sits back and watches things unfold. I wouldn't mind if he's kind of like, okay, I'm winding it. I'm going to throw this big buff for my team and it's going to be like really awesome when it lands. Just anything that gives you that, like the things that everyone loves in Overwatch are like the, oh my God, I can't believe I hit that. Fuck yeah. Like I landed that pulse bomb, or like I grapple shot at his Widow. Fucking awesome. I think we need more of those. We need like something that's like, oh man, I really felt good to hit. Like Live Grip, when it first came out, people were like, oh cool, I saved that guy. But now it's just like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's dying. I gripped him.
Yeah, I think his skill shot is his platform, because you can sometimes, well, I guess also his tree, you can sometimes deny things with
It's
that,
so
but-
unreliable is the problem, right? If
Yeah.
they were more reliable, I'm with you. Like if the platform was a reliable skill shot that you're like, I can deliver this on this guy if I'm good, but like it's so clunky.
And it's hard to know if it's going to block a doorway or not if it goes up.
Or like
Yeah.
it's too close to a wall, it won't even lift, right? It's like so awkward to tell sometimes where it's gonna, if it's gonna go where you want it to go. So yeah, I think that's my Lifeweaver rant. AVRL, I don't think we've heard from you on Lifeweaver.
I brought up Lifeweaver. I just it's such a I can see where they're trying to go with the hero, but I just don't know like how
Right,
you're
yes.
supposed to make this hero into
Yes.
like something good for the game, because utility is, it's all good team play stuff, but it doesn't feel super impactful, or like there's no big wow factor in there, which I think is like a huge thing, huge part of the game. Like there's nothing he does that's like, oh, I just hit the sleep dart, or basically what Amy just said, you know. So
All right, cool. Well, let's, in the interest of time, let's move on then to Lucio. So how do you feel about Lucio here? I think Emmy was like pretending to be a Lucio main at the start of this podcast. Custa, main support, you said had been freed from Lucio jail. So is Lucio not maybe the dominant at the high? But he's always high elo, low elo. Is really discrepancy, right, between how Lucio ends up manifesting.
Yeah, Lucio is kind of like, he's still good at the high level, like if you're playing around it, but I actually don't really like him in ranked that much right now. I don't think anyone's really using the value of the speed, other than like certain maps like Flashpoint and stuff like that, where like speed is kind of like a necessity, or like control. So personally, I think you can get away with without a Lucio right now, at least in ranked. We haven't scrimmed in a hot minute, or like played any matches in a hot minute, so I think he's probably still pretty good. I think Lucio's fine. I think we just leave him at a solid. He does his job. It's kind of like a let's see Space Ranger and wait and see kind of vibe is where I'm at with Lucio. Because I think if Space Ranger does come in and provide speed, the question's going to be, you know, that's cool. Does Space Ranger slot in for Lucio in any given situations for that? And therefore, what is Lucio weak in? What is Space Ranger strong in? And then you can sort of like put the pieces together of where Lucio, the direction Lucio should go, and Space Ranger.
Emmy, I'll take it to you next. Is that kind of where it's at, where we're kind of wondering, well, how will Space Ranger affect Lucio? Like, will it be two speedy boys, or, you know, boying down,
Yeah,
like stacking on each other, or will it be one replaces the other?
Yeah, I think it's more likely that one replaces the other, if I had to guess. But yeah, I think that's kind of a wait and see. I mean, he's, like I said, we're still scrimming with him, so I think he's still probably pretty good. I think speed is always going to be a useful utility ability, and I think that's why Lucio is a fun hero and a good hero. But I think he's never going to be super amazing in ladder. Well, in lower ranks, I should say. In high ranks, he's probably fine. But in lower ranks, I don't think he's ever going to be that great because he requires so much coordination. But he does have the option to play aggressively and red at Lucio. So I think that kind of is the trade-off, which is okay for a hero. I think he's in a good spot.
KarQ?
I mean, I said it earlier where like I think it's just a product of like what's strong right now, and I feel like Lucio like it's been so good for a while since season 9, of course, with the whole like the boop and the lockout time. Lucio's just crazy because like you can slot him into like every comp. Previously, it'd be like okay, brawl only, and then now it's like oh, we can actually play him with dive like Winston, Kiriko, Lucio plus like Doom and like Winston and stuff, and then it's like oh, I can also play Lucio with poke, like with Sigma. Teams just started running Lucio with it. So I mean, Lucio's always going to be fine. And then with the whole Space Ranger thing, there's a speed boost cap in the game, right? So hard to say.
You
layer
can
them.
always chain them back to
You
back.
can layer
yeah.
them. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. You could layer them. So instead of replacing, you could still play them synergistically. It just kind of depends on like, you know, the archetype and style that Space Ranger is and the rest of Space Ranger's kit. But yeah, right now I'd probably put Lucio at like B+. Like still fine if you want to play it, but you know, might be one of the first to go if like the Pharaoh's dominating the game and like nobody else is swapping. It's like, okay, fine, I'll swap to something. You know.
I like the KarQ's making a live tier list here. He's got like a B+, A tier, A- for every
Yeah.
hero already.
I wrote a script for this last night, so like it's
Right.
fresh in my head.
You're like, oh, yeah, this is where it's going. Okay. We're getting early
Yeah.
access to the KarQ video. There you go. Subscribe.
Yeah, just my thoughts. Yeah.
Like and subscribe. AVRL, how do you feel about all of this?
Lucio is like a important hero in this game, but like important in a way where like I think he's the only hero that kind of does his specific niche. Like this AoE speed boosting is kind of like, you know, that's the most important part about Lucio. That's the entire identity. I wonder if it's time that we introduce like, I don't know. You got to be careful because I don't know that I want to say that we just need more speed in the game, but there's not a lot of options apart from Lucio. Like if you're going to play certain comps, like you just have to lock into Lucio. And you know, there's just no other alternative to Lucio. I feel like there's now like more and more alternatives to what you can pick in the game where like, you know, you don't have to play this one hero. Like there's even more than one. You can choose between Mercy and Lifeweaver if you just want a heal bot actually. Up for debate which one is actually better for you to pick. But Lucio's the only hero that kind of does what he does. And I wonder if it's time that we sort of like change that up a little bit. I'd love to see them bring in another hero that can maybe challenge Lucio for that. Obviously keeping in mind, like you don't want to heavily mobility to creep the game and you don't want to just like add a ton of speed boosts everywhere. Because the challenge would be like, what happens if you pair Lucio with another different Lucio that kind of had speed boosts as well? Now you just got two speed boosting team heroes, which kind of like probably makes the game weird. But he's actually one of the heroes that limits, you know, discussion about hero bans because he's a super obvious hero ban. Because once you ban Lucio, you remove so many of these brawl comps, you remove so many comps that are reliant on the speed to be like actually viable. So yeah, like he's kind of cursed in that way, where, you know, I think it's great that he's in the game, but also, man, like I don't know that you can have another speed boosting hero just because like if you played that and Lucio at the same time, how oppressive would that be? But then, you know, you just have to have Lucio for these certain comps, otherwise you just can't really play them as well. So it's a weird place to be in, for sure. But otherwise, I think the hero is still fine. The hero is still strong. High skill ceiling hero, so that's good. I like that.
Yeah. I think you brought up a great point there. I think that in terms of the hero, I think he's mostly an inoffensive. I kind of have recently felt like his boop does a little bit too much again. Like they buffed the damage recently, and I've started to feel like it's a little bit oppressive in like how in duels, but mostly he's largely inoffensive. I think that wider game state that you're talking about is the more relevant point, and it's almost like the two shield synergy that we had problems with in Overwatch 1, right? Where it's like, well, we want shield heroes, but then you stack two shield heroes and it's a little problematic, and like we had to separate it. And now it's like the same, but with speed, because speed is so singular in this game. Like shields are so, like you have to deal with the shield, and like speed, you have to deal with the shield. Like it's the speed. So you're right. It's like a question we've dodged for a while, and we've just said, yeah, whatever. Let Lucio be perma meta.
You can't even, it's not even like we'll just like hard cap the speed to something. It's like you can do that. It's not about stacking the two speeds together. It's about the fact that there's no downtime. It's like one hero speeds and the other support hero just speeds after that, and then it goes back to Lucio. They just like swap cooldowns.
And we saw
Junk what double shield was.
Junkers Queen Goats was this, right? It was like at the start of launch Overwatch 2, it was like we have Lucio going in, and then the Junker Queen's also shouting. So it's like it's just the chain speed, and now add a third in now, right? So let's say there's Lucio speed, there's Junker Queen shout, there's a third speed. Maybe Lucio speed is back with the. You're never not speeded, right? Like the cooldown is back with.
This is what I think the real problem with double shield was. It wasn't that you could put two shields down at the same time. No one's really doing that. It's the fact that there was no downtime with shields. It's one shield, and the other tank will put a shield, and that's broken. Then the first tank puts down the shield again because the cooldown's back. That's the real frustrating part. So. Yeah, I don't know what you're supposed to do. There's like as much as I would like for there to be a Lucio alternative, I just think it'd probably be a net negative for the game if you had a second hero that could affect your team's ability to speed. And at least Junker Queen shout, I think the cooldown is still like long enough that it's not like super oppressive. But yeah, I mean, that's a great example. Like Queen Shout and Lucio speed boost, alternating those two. It's like, man, there's so much speed. Too much.
I think the important thing that's going to come down to Space Ranger is how much they heal. Because one of the biggest weaknesses of Lucio is that if you're using amp to speed, then you're not doing a lot of healing, right? You know, I think he does about 5,000 healing per 10 in situations like that. If you're like utilizing the speed boost a lot. If Space Ranger is the same, especially if it's going to cost them heals to speed, we obviously have no idea what's going to happen. But like, if Space Ranger does a ton of healing and provides speed boost, I think you will definitely see both. But the question becomes, is there a limitation of these heroes of Space Ranger doesn't do enough healing, Lucio doesn't do enough healing, so therefore we have speed, but we don't have anything else. So it's going to be like an all-in kind of setup. So it's one of those wait and see kind of things until we see the kits or anything like that.
Yeah, I think we're good to raise these points, but as Custa said, let's wait and see. It wouldn't surprise me for an Overwatch 2 hero to do all of it and not have any cost. Like, it wouldn't surprise me for Space Ranger to have speed boost and still Giga heal. But let's give the devs the benefit of the doubt and find out what happens. Okay, let's move on then to Mercy, the subject of AVRL's background. And of course, the Pink Mercy, the return of Pink Mercy. Maybe the most notable event, like actually, this isn't even a maybe. The most notable event of this season, for sure. For sure. The most notable thing that's happened is that Pink Mercy came back. But how about Mercy in general? How do we actually feel about Mercy? I know a lot of Mercy mains have felt like she's been really underpowered. I certainly have seen Skiesti and Neandro and others kind of say, like, you know, we're waiting for some sort of buff or some sort of tweak. Emmy, do you feel like, you said you've been playing a lot of Mercy recently. Are you fine with her? Or like, do you think she needs buffs? Do you think she's...
I think she's good now because of Farah currently. But I do think she probably needs something. I think she probably just needs a rework or a different ability. She just, I don't think there's a good way to balance that hero currently. I don't think it's going to be tweaking numbers that's going to fix her, because she gets overpowered really quickly and she gets underpowered really quickly. So I think it's going to require a rework. Also, everybody should go buy a Pink Mercy skin. It goes to breast cancer. So breast cancer research, not the cancer.
I was gonna say,
I'm team breast cancer.
Yeah, not the side we want to be rooting for there. Yeah, I mean, we alluded to some aspects of this. So if there's not a lot to add, that's fair. I understand. But like, you know, what AVRL said earlier about like, well, maybe we can give Mercy this third thing that lets her damage as well. That's an idea.
I think that's a really cool idea, is giving her something that gives her some sort of like attack ability, or like even in the whatever it was where she was firing. Yeah, Mirror Watch. I thought she was really fun in that, being able to be more aggressive and just take fights more into your own hands rather than relying on teammates. I think that's a good direction for her.
AVRL's
not
dying
necessarily
to say something.
that specifically. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Here we
how
go.
much longer do we have, AVRL? Let's go.
I'll keep us just saying. Here's the clippable moment of the podcast in case there hasn't been one yet. To me, Mercy is like the Malga supports. Like, she's the most like. How do we on the spider chart find one area and just giga buff that to S plus, or like, you know? And you might even argue it's like, oh, she doesn't actually have the best single target healing in the game. It's not about that. It's about the fact that that's her entire thing. She does a single target healing. She flies around the map, does a ton of single target healing, and then raises. And we haven't even really brought up Rez yet. I don't know if anyone really I shouldn't say like, really thinks it's a good ability in the game in terms of its health in the game. To me, it's, you know, it's along the same lines of stuff that just like denies the skillful things in the game. It's like, oh, if it takes you a lot of skill to get a kill and the Rez just comes on through and denies that, it's kind of lame. It's at least like the Rez is in a way healthier place than it has been in the entire history of Overwatch. Like, the Razors have been the most punishable it has ever been, and the most costly to use it has ever been. So at least, you know, we're on a good place in that regard. But like, yeah, the design of this hero, I just think, causes problems for the game, and you know, unfortunately, she's also a hero that's hard to rework. Like, you bring up maybe doing a rework, Emmy. It's like, this hero is, if you get the rework right, even if you got the rework right for what it's worth, even if the rework was actually like positive. People are so used to the way Mercy is, and people are so, for better or worse, in love with the way that Mercy already is. If you truly do main this hero and you like, just, you know, love the crap out of this hero, you don't want anything to happen to this hero. You just want her to be good. But the problem with, if Mercy is good, I think the meta is fundamentally bad. Like any meta where Mercy is like, oh, you got to pick this hero. Like Mercy's really good right now. Like I don't think that's a fun time in Overwatch at all. I don't think the meta must be really bad if Mercy is like a must pick. So anytime I think if Mercy mains want her to be good, that's probably like, they want her numbers to be good, in which case she's going to be oppressive in the game, and then no one's really having fun. The Mercy mains are going to have a lot of fun, and the game is just going to suffer for it. So yeah, and I don't know what the proportion of Mercy players is that actually like where she is versus the proportion that's like she's not actually not that interesting, and it'd be better if she had changes. So I'm glad at least there's like prominent voices within the Mercy community, like we discussed KSC, who like would probably prefer there to be some interesting changes. I know she's clearly like kind of on Blizzard's radar because of the whole Mirror Watch situation. Like we've discussed that experimental modes like this are used for Blizzard to test out things in a safe way where it's like, okay, if people really hate this, like, don't worry, guys, just Mirror Watch, just an arcade mode, not actually in the real game. So yeah, I joke about the Mercy Mafia kind of controlling the game and balancing that way, but I think in a soft way they kind of do. It's like Blizzard are very, very scared about touching this hero because of the response that'll happen. I agree.
I will say, okay, Emmy, actually, you go first. I got something else to add.
Doesn't Ski also not like Res? I think
No,
she
they
doesn't want.
that's kind of what I was going to say.
I align with Ski a lot on this here, honestly.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I think that, like, to be fair to the Mercy players, I think the hero has changed a lot actually over the years. Like we went from 5-man res to double, triple res, whatever it was in the Valk, into
I think
now
they've
Valk.
hated every change though.
But then,
Yeah,
but
but they
then,
still
but
play
they've
her.
kind of stuck with her throughout all of that. And I think the core point is that there are elements that have kept Mercy players unhappy throughout all of these things. That there are, I think, a lot of Mercy players who don't like damage boosts, a lot of Mercy players who don't like res, and I don't think there is this homogenous viewpoint that they all believe that this is the Mercy we want. Like I think a lot of them look at, from whatever I gather, the only thing that I think is most beloved is the movement, is the Guardian Angeling. And that's another thing that
and
they
it's
changed.
criticism too with the whole slingshot thing being like more punishing. If you do like a certain movement tech, you get punished for a longer cooldown or something, which ruins the fluidity, which is what I hear. And I can understand that sentiment. It makes it less fun for the Mercy players, but it may be a bit better for the opponents to help deal with like how fast she moves around. But I've always felt like that's not really a good excuse. I feel like other heroes like Kiriko and stuff have more oppressive kind of like movement, instant TP, and like, all that kind of stuff versus the 1.5 second GA. But like if you do like a movement tech, it goes to like 2 seconds, I think, or like 2.5 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. That's like one valid criticism I've heard of something they want changed.
Season 3 Mercy, Season 4 Mercy was a problem. I think that was like the biggest one of why Mercy hasn't come back from that, because like I think her GA was really short, but she was like unkillable. I don't know if that's when she was self-healing herself at like maximum rare. I don't remember the patches.
I think that was because of the Sojourn pocket. That pair was the problem more than anything.
Yeah, the mirror.
But there was
But
the
she was
self-healing as well.
Unchaseable. She was self-healing, and
Yes.
good Mercies literally just you couldn't chase them. Like because the GA was almost always up. Like you couldn't follow them. So there needs to be a punish window on like the Mercy movement. But I don't know. It's just like
Maybe
it
I
can
didn't
be a
feel
little
it because it
oppressive.
wasn't my job as the support to usually mark her, so maybe I didn't feel that
No, I remember
frustration.
I have visions
was
in my
brutal.
head of like being on this podcast and all of us being like, not us, but like the members of the podcast being like that she's just cannot kill her. We cannot. There's just nothing we can do to kill her. She's always like flies around the next corner. If you try to shoot her and somebody else is shooting the thing that she's healing, the self heal that came from the triage healing, whatever that they call the passive, was like going nuts. So I think clearly, as AVRL has alluded to, there's always been a problem with Mercy. It's just like different versions of what that problem is. So clearly we haven't settled on it. The conversation is quiet because Mercy isn't being played that much. But the minute that more Mercy gets played, the conversation will arise, and we need to have the conversation again about like, well, where do we go with this? And again, I don't envy the devs, but I will say that they have changed Mercy a lot. Like they changed the super jump a lot. They changed, like they made it a thing you could do. They changed how it works. They've tried a lot. I don't know if they'll find the perfect answer. We'll see. There's been a lot of ideas, so I hope they find one that sticks. Okay.
She just
go ahead, Custa.
she just most heavily represents like the pocket healing in this game, because it's clearly like you click it here and you pocket heal, like, and I don't know, I just so ruthlessly dislike pocket healing. It's the one of the worst experiences. Like, forget about the res. It's like you're dueling any character and a mercy flies in. It's like you just can't out damage the healing. I mean, you have to be a really good player, obviously, but like the kind of how easy it is to heal versus how difficult it is to deal the damage. The discrepancy is so insane when it comes to like fighting anything that involves a mercy. I just think everything she brings to the table just makes the game worse. Damage boosting, just has had so many issues in the past. Res, I don't think as a mechanic it will never be fun. I think Valkyrie is like the only thing about the kit that it's like, wow, this is actually kind of cool. The movement is cool, but like as you guys have said, people might still have issues with that. So I don't know. I just fundamentally just don't think this hero is good for the game.
I think overall, this is true across so many different games, especially MOBAs, which is like what this hero is. Io, Yuumi, like these are heroes that are generally just like hated because their thing that they do is enable one other character to be stronger than all the other characters. So what it feels like is you are fighting an uphill battle that you can't win. It's not fun to play against. It's also not that fun to play with because if you're not the person getting pocketed, then you're also just like kind of left on an island, right? Like if you're the support playing with a Mercy, sometimes it can be really difficult. I think it's just frustrating to play with. I agree, Rez. I don't think Rez is the worst part of her kit. I think it's just the consistent direct healing plus the damage boost makes it so that the scales are always tipped against you as you're playing against it. And I just don't think that's fun. And that's why every time Mercy gets even a little bit strong, everyone starts freaking out because I just think it's unfun to play against. I agree, she needs a rework, but we're kind of in the situation where it's like there are vehement fans who will defend Mercy to the ends of the earth who don't want her changed. And on top of that, Mercy makes them a lot of money and her core identity of her kit is rezzing people and healing people directly in the way that her staff works. And that's a shitty reason, but I think is probably more realistic than what we have. So I just don't know how you deal with it other than leaving her where she is right now, where it's like she's kind of good, but she's not a big problem because she's not that strong. And that's honestly how both League of Legends and Dota overcame those issues as well, because they just like, hey, we're just going to make it so these heroes are never that good. People like playing them, but it's just not a good hero.
I will say to SVB's point though, to be fair, she has had changes in the past, so I'm not going to pretend she's never had changes. We can argue whether those count as reworks or not. Maybe the Valkyrie to mass res thing is like technically a rework. I mean, dude, if giving Hog a pig pen counts as a rework, I guess like any kid doing anything with one ability counts as a rework now. But yeah, like a rework in my mind and possibly to Emmy's mind as well, but I'll let you speak for yourself on that, is like more like in a Ressa style kind of thing, or maybe not even that aggressive, but like, I think Doom swapping roles is a pretty reasonable rework as well. Yeah, just something like that. But the kind of rework I'm looking for fundamentally changes the character so much that I know for a fact that the Mercy mains they'll probably all abandon the game, or like they'll go on the most insane strike and complaining spree about the game you've ever seen. So, that's I don't think it'll ever happen. And that's what I really mean when I say the Mercy Mafia is like going to be enforcing a certain thing about the character. Like that's actually what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, oh, you can't change one ability. I think you can still do stuff like, can you change Raze again? Can you do one ability at a time again? But if you want to do more fundamental changes, it's not going to happen. I think the game's been held hostage pretty clearly on that regard. Every other hero though, you can completely dump Sarissa, change your entire hero. That's fine. Mercy, can't touch her that way.
I somewhat disagree. I think that the core of Mercy is her movement. So I think if they keep the movement, I think most Mercy mains will be happy. I think that's why a lot of people play her, is because that's what's unique about her kit. Well, I mean, a lot of things are unique, but that's the most unique about her kit, is that she can fly around like that. I also somewhat disagree on Rez. I'm okay with Rez. I think it's fine now. I also think tons of games have a res, and so I don't think it's super oppressive. Also, there's still a one shot in the game, so I've always said as long as one shots exist, I'm okay with res being in the game. But yeah, I think Mercy mains would be okay with the rework as long as they keep her movement. I think that's the biggest part of her kit.
I will say it is way harder for Widow to get that one shot than it is for Mercy to get the res.
I agree.
We've gone over that. We've gone over
Yeah,
that.
I would love Zillion ult Any League of Legends heads out there? It's a thing that when you press the button, there is now like a 4-second window. If the hero is killed in that window, then they will come back rezzed in like a short duration, like after a short duration. So that makes it is you are making a choice of first of all, you'd have to be tethered to them. So you're having to be near them when they die. And then also it's giving you a skill expression of like, I've clicked this. And then there would be a visual indicator where people can stop shooting that person, wait out the duration. That doesn't even need to be 4 seconds. It can be like 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And then it's like, there's a counterplay to it, right? I think one of the big frustrations that does happen with Rez is someone across the map died to something random. They literally fly over and just press E on them and there's unpunishable, right? So you're adding at least some level of skill expression, counterplay, all that type of stuff.
That's a cool idea. I like that.
My pushback on that would be it just basically turns it into like, however long that lasts becomes essentially an MO field. Do you know what I mean? Like a solo MO field. It's like, well, if you kill this person, then they're going to res, so just stop shooting this person entirely. It just becomes that. It's like an extreme version of Zarya Bubbles. Like, no, just stop shooting that person.
And there's no risk to mercy. Yeah, that could be problematic. Yeah. I see where you come from.
It also reminds me of early mass res where the Mercy's yelling, die now so that my res goes off.
Yeah.
just turbo feed. Come on, I pushed the button on you. I will say, again, I think this has been, I mean, this is a discussion that could be its own entire podcast, so I won't dwell on it too much. All I'll say is that I think, because Custa brought up Io, I don't know Yuumi, I don't know League well enough, I've only barely played. To Io, what is interesting to me, he's like a 0% pick in ranked, it's just like a near must pick at pro level, or like a really high, like desirable pick at pro level, which is like the complete reverse of Mercy. Like Mercy has almost never been like good at pro level, apart from when she was like giga busted. And it's interesting that the skill expression there is like quote unquote higher, because it's like it's like almost like Lucio. It's like when you have someone who knows how to use this character in like for the benefit of the team, the value just goes here. But like when it's your random average Joe picking this character in ranked, it's like fucking useless. He's gonna troll your game. Like is no point. And I would rather that. If that was Mercy, I think a lot of the complaints would die down as well. If it was like, although again, I don't think it ever worked that way, because the way the Mercy has been for so long, it's like, well, actually the majority of the players playing Mercy are more in your average tiers, and pro players never touch Mercy. But if it had manifested in some alternate universe the other way around, I think this would have been moot. People would have been fine with like, yeah?
It's been a long time since I've played Dota or IO, but like does IO like pocket heal? Like you can do some healing with the tether, right? But it's not
you
like
have to have self-healing. You have to heal yourself with like items. So it's very
whatever you heal boosts onto healing the person that you're tethered to.
So it is limited. Whereas like the reason why, to answer the question, just like to respond to the statement to what you're saying, SVB, is like, why is IO like the opposite of Mercy? It's like because Mercy just gets value by existing. You just click on someone, you pocket heal them, doesn't cost you anything, and that's it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. There's a lot of intricacy to IO, because it's not just you don't just boost it. Like everything you do comes at a cost. So if you boost them, you actually cost your own life. Like there's like this giga charge you can do to them, and it like starts draining your own HP. And then the way he works is whatever he does to himself, if he's tethered to someone, it amps onto them. So he has to first have the items, and then also his ult is the teleport. And what it does is he tethers onto someone, and then he teleports to a point in the map, and then like 4 seconds later, he's gonna return to that spot. And if someone is tethered to them, that person's coming back. So something you'll see
which is
like,
really valuable on MOBA. Super valuable.
Right, yeah. So like it can be used different ways. Like you can teleport someone back to spawn and save them, but you're coming back in 4 seconds, so you're dead. Because they know where you're coming back. They can see it. So it's like, okay, you're dying, but you're saving someone. Or you can bring them back from spawn quicker.
IO also has damage utility, right? Like IO's got these like spinning orb things you can actually damage. So we're talking about a character that can actually like do other things rather than just like, I'm going to gigabuff one guy. So no, you can also like contribute to damage. You can also like do some zoning. You can just be more than a hard pocket onto a single character. And actually to Yumi's credit, Yuumi is the League of Legends version, which is attach yourself to one character. At least Yuumi has a skill shot on a ability that you have to hit to like deal damage. And the ultimate is like this kind of like
barely. You literally don't have to move on. I think Yuumi is the worst of them. Then Mercy's in the middle, and then Io is probably the best.
Let me tell you where. Where specifically Yuumi is worse than someone.
Don't get into the weeds.
We're getting too involved.
Sure.
Let's move on.
What I can say, like all of these types of this entire like archetype of designer character, I think is I don't think it's good for games. At least Io is a little bit more strategic and in the way the ultimate is super valuable and some other stuff. But like in the cost, you talk about the cost SVB. But yeah, Yumi and Mercy, no, I'm not about it. Not a fan.
Yeah, I think anything like this will always make people mad. Like any pocket hero will always make people mad. Like even in Valorant, people get mad about sages, right? Like because they can heal and res. So, okay, right. Let's move on to then Moira. Again, I think a hero who was maybe getting more attention a couple seasons ago when she was a bit more meta, but I don't hear too much about Moira. Is the complaints gone? Is the problem solved, or is there just lurking underneath the surface? KarQ, how do you feel about Moira?
I think Moira's just like whatever right now. I mean, kind of like you just play her in Brawl. I think some teams at OWCS ran like Lucio Moira as an alternative. It's just a higher survivability option in that slot if you're getting just like farmed for some reason. But like, you know, she's finicky because she's a very low skill floor, right? And ideally you don't want like something with a low floor and a low ceiling to outcap something with a high ceiling. So I mean, I think Moira's fine. She's like B tier and like fine in solo queue. Perfectly acceptable if like, you know, the other main supports like Bap or Kiriko or whatever are not in your hero pool very well. It's like
there's a lot of heroes in the B tier in this tier list.
That's what I was thinking.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
I
going
agree,
with the whole homogenize, or not really, but like, you know, just kind of like they're all kind of like pushed down a little bit, and I think that's okay.
Yeah,
you just open up
more
KarQ's
options is
tier
better,
list, and it's just like 8 supports
and they're
on
more
B tier.
situational, and it's just like, you know, you pick them based on like your comfort plus map plus your comp. Like you actually consider all those factors versus just picking this because it's just simply the best in every scenario, which is not healthy for the game.
Yeah, I'll say I think the DPS passive really hurt Moira at the higher ranks because I think Moira was always successful off of the fact that she could self-heal herself, and the orb like made her like pretty much she won every single 1v1, but I think the DPS passive kind of hurt her a little bit, which I think has been good. What do you think?
You still don't take isolated 1v1s against Moira because she will still, just regardless of the DPS passive, it's still too much with the heal orb plus like the suck.
Was
I don't
she
know.
also meta for a little bit after the change?
Was she nerfed?
Or was that before?
I think it was actually the opposite. I think the DPS passive was what made Moira strong because she was the only
Yeah,
person who
'cause she
outputted
was-
enough healing.
Yeah,
Like she actually
exactly.
she can-
it was
she
the
can
stack
outdo
on
it.
Moira.
And meta comps.
Yeah, I remember
Really?
vividly having been like forced into Moira because it was like just stack on the Moira and fucking go. Like this is the only way you can actually
She was the
sustain.
only character that could out heal it.
Really? Oh, I was just play Baptiste in that situation. I've just
Yeah, you
seen like
could as well.
a severe lack
Yeah.
of. I've seen a severe lack of Moiras in my top ranks, and I was trying to think about why that would be. And I think it's just like, at least the top ranks, people the only way they play her is in an aggressive style where she's like running into the backline, and I think that's just a lot harder to do.
Oh,
these
she's
days.
not meta anymore.
Plus the HP. Yeah,
Yeah, not at all.
like everyone has
just,
more
like,
HP,
right
so you can't
after.
burn them.
Yes, yeah. The DPS Moira seems to be less of a thing, although never truly gone. Emmy, how do you feel about what was just said there?
I think Moira's always gonna suffer because she doesn't have utility. She literally the benefit is being able to save yourself and raw healing output, and I just don't think that's a good way to design a hero. I think she's always gonna suffer because of it.
I think competitively, I think she's fine the way she is, but I think you need heroes like her for accessibility reasons. Like they're, you know,
That's
Overwatch's
fair, but
identity for casual players as well. Like, yeah, go
But I
ahead.
don't think that limits her from having utility. Like they had an orb, they tried that orb that one time that like what I can't remember, necrotic orb.
Necrotic orb, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think they tried
like, I
it,
think
but
they
like
can
the
play with stuff.
yeah,
I don't think
Maybe
necrotic
if you-
orb was necessarily amazing, but I think they can play with things that still allow easy access to the character.
I think
think
the problem with Necrotic Orb was that they took away her DPS Orb. So it's like, it was a cooldown,
Yeah,
but then it
they-
just felt like you didn't have anything to do most of the time because Necrotic Orb was very niche.
Oh, that's right. They took something away for it. So like the subtraction. I think if you can add something else to it, I think that'd be okay with like a numbers tweak elsewhere. But yeah. I
And I
mean,
think-
they also tried other stuff. You guys remember? Wasn't it like if you faded on a CC'd person, they
Oh
like
yeah.
they cleansed?
Cleanse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was
They tried
That's
that.
kind of
one
fun.
the one trauma I'll always remember is that one PTR patch where Moira could fade even when knocked down. Like there was like they showed the clip of like you got shattered and she just faded anyways. Like she was slammed and then just faded anyways. The
I did
nightmare
not
fuel.
remember that.
That was a PTR that they didn't thankfully never went through with. I will say one point I want to bring up here that friend of the podcast, Spilo, I'm sure would bring up if he was here, which is that, he did this little survey where he asked like players of every rank like what they find most frustrating, and what he found was like the lower you go, it's like the opposite fallacy. We say like, oh well, low rank players need Moira. The heroes they hate most are the Moira and the Bastions of the world, because that's what they have to deal with. Right? When you have like Master Aim or GM Aim, you can shoot and kill the Moira, but when you're gold and you're Ana trying to duel a Moira in your backline, you're never winning. And so I actually think it's like the opposite. Like, it actually hurts the gold players when Moira is like good, because she can just free value.
Easy value for like not as much input kind of thing.
Yeah.
I literally just did a VOD review for a silver Moira, and she was fully backlining, wasting all of her cooldowns, not using them properly at all, fading into the backline in front of 5 people. Nobody on the enemy team cared. Like, they just killed the Ana, they killed the Lifeweaver, she ulted the Lifeweaver. The Zarya turned around, looked at both her supports, and then kept walking forward. It's crazy.
Yeah, I
It's
think easy value in this game is like a dangerous concept. Is like, I used to be like, I don't know, I've been flip-flopping on this for a long time. I used to be like, well, no, heroes like this should exist in the game because it's like a good bridge for new players to come in. But then you bring up that point speed, which is super important. It's like, okay, great. It's just a great like intro character for people to come in on. But then it just like gets heavily abused at low ranks because it's super easy to get value for the same reasons that it's like, friendly for people to play. That is the exact reason why she's busted at low ranks, because she's too easy to play, too easy to get value. And the way you counter that is like, well, once you get better at the game and you can aim, it's like you can just get more value by aiming. But people at low ranks and new to the game, they're not going to be able to do those things. So any hero, any design in the game that can just like get really simple value. I mean, yeah, of course, it's just kind of like
She also doesn't have a high skill ceiling, so she caps out really low. And that's why she's worse at higher ranks.
So what about the SK? Isn't it like if you can actually track their head, maybe you could do a bit more and then lower the baseline to kind of give it a bit more expression? Because like that, you're right. At most, the biggest expression is probably just like how you manipulate your fade jumps, which isn't necessary at the lower ranks, right? So
and it's kind of niche in a lot of situations. Like, you don't always have to fade jump.
Okay, I'm just gonna, in the interest of time, I'm just gonna ask any last thoughts on Moira before we move on.
I'll comment in the Chronicle really quickly because I didn't jump on that yet. I think the idea was solid, but the execution was that we discussed it, remove the damage orb. But also I think the idea was to remove the damage orb because I think some people were thinking that was like a really lame ability anyway. But the necrotic orb being a debuff, I think debuffs in this game just don't feel fun. Like, no one enjoyed being feebled and not being able to do damage and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably where they went wrong. I'd like them to explore that again. I don't know if there's a different direction they can take it, but I think we've learned that debuffs are bad. Buffs are probably fine as long as they're kept in check. Maybe certain like debuffs would be okay, but losing damage felt really kind of fun. So
Moira speed
I think
orb. Go back to what we were talking about earlier. If you're near the speed orb, you're fucking faster, so you just throw it in that direction. Anyway, that's just a stupid idea.
Lucio means they're screaming right now.
Just the speed, Jesus Christ, the speed orb. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I do agree with you though. I think buff generally better, debuff generally people hate. So if like something that helps her team, maybe it would be interesting. Okay, let's move on to our final hero then, Zenyatta. I'm gonna take it to our resident Zen lover, Custa, in the bottom left. Custa, is it a Zenyatta moment or not?
I think Zen's in a fine spot. Obviously you play it on like circuit and long sight lines where there aren't a lot of flanks. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of maps like that. Like, all the maps being added aren't really very linear. So it can be hard, but I think Zen's in a fine spot. If you make Zen stronger, you're ruining all the tank's days. As I said earlier, it's a greedy pick. It's one of those things that you pick if you think you can get away with it. Like, for me, if they're playing like Sigma, double hit scan, Illari, something, I'm like, well, I'm just going to go Zen. They have nothing that's going to punish me for playing Zen. And I think that's a good identity for the hero to be in. It's kind of like a way for you to switch to force them to react, because I'm not going to try and play like, I don't know, like Illari into that setup because I'm never going to win. So it's just a hero that forces them to do something and potentially change. So Zen's not hard meta. Definitely not strong. Still has their weaknesses. Kind of like Brig has a niche. I kind of like it. And also fuck Hog. So let's go Zen.
Yeah, absolutely. Zen is like, people just still don't understand. Like, the Zen is such a great answer to these fucking annoying heroes like Hog, Orisa, Mauga. Bro, Zen just go cooks on them. I love when these guys come out. When I'm playing tank, I fucking hate those guys. I'm like, this bitch went to spawn and went hog. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. But then I'm like, I've played sport. I just go Zen. I'm like, this guy just hitbox all day. All day I hit this. Emmy, how do you feel about Zenyatta?
I agree. I think he's in a really good spot right now. I agree with Custa. I think that whenever he's too strong, it just makes tanks miserable, and tanks are already miserable, so we don't want to make that worse. So any heat we can keep off of supports, I'm good with. I think he's in a really good spot. I think the Discord change was much needed.
KarQ, do you agree? AVRL, I'll let you go in a sec. I'll just go to KarQ.
Okay, my hot take is I think he's C tier right now.
Oh,
I don't think he's
maybe
good.
the B.
He only
Not B.
C tier?
Not B.
Yeah. No, I put Lifeweaver and Mercy in C tier as well, but like I didn't mention it.
Oh,
but
okay.
or I think maybe Lifeweaver in low B, but I think well, when I say C, like C is kind of like a C for me is like niche and depends on comp, which is by definition Zenyatta's. It's like it really depends on the map, depends on your comp. You need like I can't think of a reason why I'd be like, okay, I'll swap to Zen like because of this. There has to be like multiple things that fall into place to make it effective. Like they need to make sure they don't have this hero. We need to make sure we run something that can sort of protect me and back me up as well. Like there's too many conditions for him, and I feel like Illari just pretty much replaced it. I literally played Zen on like with Sigma, Bap Zen on Sigma on like Havana, and like both my DPS were like, dude, you get off Zen right now because like
that's your first mistake. Don't listen to
Then
those
you
guys.
go tell them
twice.
to go fuck themselves, and
that,
then you
well,
keep playing.
I swapped Illari. I swapped Illari, and the game actually got like 10 times easier. I actually think,
yeah, probably, yeah.
you know, right now, not because Zen is, you need the right conditions, and I think Illari replaced him as like a poke option. Like, remember how I said my idea, at least my theory is that like I think Illari's played really well just by like pressuring the tank because of all the reasons, because it benefits Illari, and I think it's a little better than Discord right now. Especially if the other tank knows how to play around Discord, people are like have caught up and been like, oh, I'm Discorded, let me just break line of sight for a bit before engaging. I mean, anyways, that's just my hot take. I think I genuinely think that he's need to be careful, right? If you once you tune down Illari for that poke in a bit, then like, you know, Zen can come back up and has a bit more of a role, but like he's just completely replaced for me. He's too situational. That's it.
One thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough, and this might be my whatever master for, you know, noob take POV. People do not talk about the silent footsteps enough. Like that shit goes so hard, dude. I cannot tell you the number of times I just go on a silent flank, kill 2 people, and I like that's something Illari can't do. You just sneak up on people, bam, bam, that guy's dead, next guy's dead. Like that shit goes hard. Like I totally respect what you're saying, KarQ, and I agree with it. But I think there's also a sleeper element to Zenyatta where it's like I think he has the higher pop-off potential. And I think in the cycle
I don't disagree with that.
I think in the cycle of counter swapping, he's a great, like maybe you can't one trick Zen, like that's hard, but like in the cycle of counter swapping, he's great because like I said, those tanks that are really oppressive, you really just put work on them. And as long as you don't have some hard dive, he goes hard. And even if you force them to hard dive you, it's like so much like you're doing something, right? You're like forcing a response and then you can switch to something else. And I think that like that's really powerful in the support role.
Like that, yeah, but that still keeps him at seat. It's just like all those things. Okay, force them a resource, then I have to swap off him again. You know, what I mean?
Don't disagree with like
more
the overall
consistent and more of a generalist. Yeah.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. Like what you're saying is like C is niche and like it is dependent, but I think he's like he goes really hard. He goes A when he goes S when he's really good, right? He's like he's suddenly like fucking destroying the lobby, and then you go back down. You have to swap. Okay, fine. He's just a hero who has to learn to swap, right? Like that's the thing about Zen. AVRL, sorry, you had something you wanted to say.
All good. I'm mainly just going to focus on Discord because I feel like everyone's talked about the other areas of the hero, which I think are great. But Discord to me, it's like, okay, they nerfed it for the whole line of sight thing of the cooldown. It was necessary because of where Discord is in the game, but I don't think that they've addressed the actual real issue with Discord, which is the fact that, I just think damage boosting this game, the dangerous thing about damage boosting this game is it really, especially for tanks, changes the delta in the TTK, the time to kill. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things about tank is just like, you know, the difference between, I've talked about this every time we bring up tank, I feel like I've brought this up at some point. It's like when you, the experience of being like this raid boss and never dying because you're giga tanky and you're being double pocketed versus just getting melted because the entire enemy team looks at you and everyone throws every single ability on you. And then Discord just amplifies everything and Discord is in some ways even worse in terms of egregiousness for abuse than Bluebeam because while Discord amplifies everyone's damage against a single target, which just really, you know, lays on how much abuse you can pile onto a single player. Like I just don't think that's good for the game. And it, yeah, like in general, like, Discord's been nerfed a ton of times. Like you guys actually remember Discord and release used to be way stronger in terms of the damage buff, but even now, I just think they got to rework Discord entirely. I think this ability just needs to go. I think everything else in the character is fine, but Discord is just so unhealthy for the game, man. And it doesn't make the tank experience fun. Like it's if you want to solve the tank experience, which I think is probably like one of the top issues that most people will talk about. It's certainly one of the top issues that gets brought up all the time by like, you know, other personalities or like content. One of the ways to like help that is just to mitigate things that can just like rapidly increase damage, like a Discord orb, you know, things like that got to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's valid to bring it up. I do think the rework did a good job, largely. Like, it feels a lot less oppressive, but I think the fundamental remains. Like, that's another one of those, like, core principles that, like, either you don't like it or you are okay with it. Any thoughts from the rest of the cast on maybe what's mentioned there about Discord and Zenyatta?
No, I think we hit most of it. As I said, like, he's a pretty... Like, he's been a really big problem in the past. I think he's fine right now. But I agree with KarQ. Like, just, he's very niche. And I think it's fine that way.
Yes.
I think it's fine that way too. I didn't say, I think it's healthier, but yeah, he needs a little protection, the right complementing support as well, and the right conditions, and yeah, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think he's like one of those heroes that needs, like, he's kind of like Hog-esque. It's like when Hog is countered, it's like, well, why are you on this fucking hero? But like when he's not, this guy's going hard. Okay, let's head over to concluding thoughts then. I will ask you guys the kind of question I usually ask at the end of these kind of podcasts is, what do you want to see in the future for supports? Like, what change do you want to see? Do you want to see them lean more to DPS supports? You want them to release a bunch of interesting different supports? Do you want them to cut down the raw healing, buff the raw healing? What's your like big picture? This is what I want from the devs for supports. I'll go to AVRL first. I'm sure he's cooked something up already.
It's just a lot of what everybody said. I just think like, you know, healing creep has increased gradually over the lifetime of the game, like Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2. And the DPS passive is a great way to address that. And it's clear that they like the devs acknowledge that healing has kind of gotten out of hand and they didn't want it's a way to reduce healing without actually just reducing the numbers of the supports themselves, which I think they could have just done instead of DPS passive, but I think DPS passive is fine. I think the game would be better if in general if we moved away from like a super heavy healing game into like more of like a, you know, a damage frag heavy game where people just accept dying more. Like you if the baseline of the game's experience was that you are just going to spawn and die and it's a pretty normal experience, then dying wouldn't feel as bad in my opinion. But when you're in a situation where the difference between being pocketed and just like living forever versus dying is so huge, it's just like it skews the entire game towards a healing game more than anything else. And right now Overwatch works, so it's like a very extreme. I don't know if it's very extreme, but it's definitely like an extreme way to move the game towards, and it would really change things. It would be like be bigger than like a season 9 change in my opinion, and extremely hard to implement. But I think healing in general, especially if it's unchecked, holds the game back design wise a lot. Holds support design back a lot in terms of like what you're supposed to do with the support design, because supports are primarily defined by how much healing they can do, and I just think that's super limiting.
Interesting, valuable opinion to bring, and thanks for bringing it as the non-support. And maybe the supports will disagree. Custa, what's your kind of vision? What do you want to see the devs push towards?
I actually think supports are in a fine spot. I'm really excited to see how Space Ranger is going to come in and how that's going to mix it up and how that's going to affect Lucio and like the way that we think about speed boosts and stuff like that. Excited to get a new support hero. Hopefully is just like interactive. I think if I'm looking at the health of the game, I agree the tank problem is the thing that needs to be solved. Whether or not that is healing, I don't think it's like purely just on healing. I think it's more about the identity of tanks in this game, and I think that's the thing that really needs to be addressed. And I'm excited for what Aaron has to say. You know, he said in a dev blog he's coming out, he's going to talk about 6v6. I assume that's going to be them talking about tanks as well. Excited to see what like their directive is for this game, because I think as long as this exists, we're going to just go around in circles right now. And I think it is really hurting the game. So
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever shake that, to be honest. I think even if
No.
like in some world we went back to 6v6, we would just be back to this. Now some people are like, well, 5v5 was better. I think that
it's a tank problem, right? Regardless of the 6v6, 5v5, like obviously people have that take of like what they think. It's a tank problem, and that's really the thing that needs to be solved, because like until that is even like addressed to a point that people are like, I guess it's fine for now, it's really going to hurt the game.
True.
Guys, I'm bringing out the sledgehammer again. You're breaking case. I've said it multiple times. It's right there.
The arrows. The option is there. Arrow constantly pointing to the break glass. Emmy, how about you? What do you want to see for the support role?
I just want supports to have more utility. I think most utility should be reserved for supports, because I always think that things should be more in their niche role, like DPS, support, tank. And I want them to be able to make plays with those utility, rather than just heal botting, and that's how they make plays, or which is not. But I don't want it ever to get to that point where you have to just heal bot. I think that's super unhealthy.
Awesome. Okay, KarQ, how about you?
I mean, I'm of the belief still. Maybe we can bridge the gap a bit between the super S and the F tier abilities of each hero, but I personally do like when they bring out heroes that have completely different archetypes and roles, like if you're truly heal botting as Lifeweaver, or if you're just purely DPSing as Illari, and then you have Kiriko that can do a bit of both. I like variety personally, for different play styles. Some of them don't sync up with me. Like I generally don't play a lot of Lifeweaver at all, but like I think for the role it's okay, or just not even just support, it's just for the game, with a little bit of fine tuning, for the extremes and outliers. Now that I've heard AVRL mention that a bit. And that's pretty much it. I don't really have too much to complain about with supports at its current state. I think they've iterated it enough where, the other roles have kind of tweaked with the DPS passive, people having a bigger HP pool since season 9 kind of like indirectly affects the healing a bit, because like it's harder to like zero or top them off to 100. And they probably just need to look at the way tanks play. That seems to be the biggest complaint. Not their strength, because I think they're strong in a vacuum, like just like based on power kit, but just the experience, the player experience.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that support remains the most balanced role within itself, like within its own containment, like who gets picked where. It's like clearly the role where the most options are available, right? Like the other roles suffer from this quite badly. Like DPS is usually a very clear contest. It's like, oh, the hit scans are best, or right now the Pharah is the best, or whatever, right? It's always like there's only 5-6 DPS heroes that are like the best, and like others are just completely in the dumpster. And then same with tank, like sometimes they're just fully dumpster tanks. We usually run through an era where there's like only one tank that anyone really should realistically pick. Support is like great. It's just like everyone can pick whatever they want. It's, we can look at the relative power strength of the other roles, like compared to the roles. And I think to Custa's point and AVRL's point about solving the tank issue, I think it goes back to like the 1v2ing. I think if we look at launch Overwatch 2, the support role was the problem role. People were like, oh man, we can't fucking like it was just boring. And they buffed support. I think they buffed support enough now that we can go back to a situation where like tanks should win every 1v1. Like maybe that's a hot take. I feel like they should win every 1v1, and they often don't against a lot of like supports in particular. I think that's where their frustration lies. Like they still lose, or like they just like
I wouldn't say lose a 1v1,
or at least
win every
they should
1v1.
be able to win a 1v1. But but I mean they have nerfed supports quite a bit. The support pass has been nerfed enough. It was really strong when the game came out. I agree, and it's better now. I think it used to be like 1 second out of line of sight, and you started healing like 20 HP a second or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous if you remember back. But yeah.
Yeah, I
digress.
mean, in the
I
sense
think we're
that
okay
like,
now.
yeah. I mean, in the sense that like, it just kind of feels like a waste of your time a lot of the time. Like you try to commit to killing a support, you're not really gonna do it, and I think that that's maybe why tanks supposed to further. But it is a fine line, as clearly by that response. It's like, well, supports are like, well, bro, I don't want to fucking fall over to tanks either. So there is a fine line there. But yeah, let's see what they cook. Let's see another support coming in. So we'll see what Space Ranger has to offer.
I'll
and
throw in
whether-
one last comment. I'll make
Yeah.
it like super quick. I do think, because tank got brought up again, I'm not going to start a new discussion, just to end with this comment. I do think the tank problem is related to supports. I'm not going to say it's because of supports, definitely not. But I think supports have a role to play in the tank issue, is what I'll mention there. And I think a lot of it has to do with the healing. So if you want to fix tanks, you have to, like, at least in some ways, have a look at what healing's impact on the game is. And now you start to really see why I have issues with pocket healing and like an overabundance of healing in the game, because I think it impacts tanks and the tank situation. So you want to fix tanks, you got to look at supports too. But it's not just because of supports, but yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anything else you guys want to add before I let you get going from this call? Any more last minute thoughts? Okay, well, in that case, Emiliath, KarQ, Custa, and AVRL, thank you very much for joining me and giving me so much of your time, guys. I appreciate it as always. Super grateful for you guys, and let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Thank you very much for coming on, and have a good rest of your day, guys. Anything you want to say to sign off?
Thanks, guys. Thanks again.
Thanks for
Bye,
having it.
Pink
Always fun.
Mercy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Peace out,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.